Why does blood represent life? Why does it represent life more than, I don't know, my stomach?
Flesh and blood. I'm just thinking basar v'dam. It's like our essence.
Well, why is it your essence? So before we can even look at this, I think we just need to understand this from a biological point of view. Why is blood such an important commodity?
Oh, it circulates and it provides.
It circulates. It is the one thing that ties everything else together. Now, the truth is, the nervous system ties us together. The muscular system ties us to some extent, but the muscular system doesn't really deal with the organs. You don't really control the muscles in your stomach. They're working automatically, and a lot of organs don't have muscles. So something like a liver doesn't have muscles. Something like kidneys don't have muscles. So the muscle system is not really connected to the whole body. The nervous system is, but even then, not so much so, because even when you have a lot of pain receptors on your extremities, right? But you have very little pain. You have few pain receptors inside your body. That's why sometimes people, when they feel something, they don't know where it's actually coming from, because the body does not expect to be penetrated to have a problem inside. So whereas your external defenses are, if you cut your finger, you need to know which finger it cut and where it got cut and so forth. So even the nervous system is not going to be connected to the entire system of the body, and surely even less connected to the vital parts of the body, right? For example, the nervous system is really very sparse in terms of the digestive system. The circulatory system, on the other hand, is of course vital to connect everything together. The circulatory system, when you breathe in, what happens? You breathe in air, and the air goes into the alveoli in your lungs. It is then transferred into the blood system. The capillaries or capillaries, depending where you come from, are then pick up the oxygen into the blood. The blood exudes or kind of gives off this carbon dioxide. There's the exchange, and those pulmonary artery then feeds into the heart, and the heart comes out the other ventricle, where it goes out to the rest of the body. So everything is connected by the circulatory system. When the circulatory system stops, that's the end, right? Because everything will immediately begin to die. What actually causes, when an animal is shechted, what causes the animal to die is the fact that you've cut the carotid arteries. You've cut, of course, the esophagus and the trachea. But the reality is, when you cut the esophagus and the trachea, that's not going to stop the animal from being. That's not going to kill the animal. What happens when you cut the esophagus and the trachea? You will cut the carotid arteries, which are over here as well, and as well it bleeds out. Right? That's called dam nefesh. That's the blood that spurts out. That at the moment the animal is slaughtered. And when that happens, the blood pressure in the brain goes down to zero. The brain is not able to process things. The brain is not able to send signals anywhere. No parts of the brain, not even the brain, is part of the brain that you're not conscious of, that keeps things going, and the animal dies. And it's a very quick death. Yes?
Have you seen this?
I don't understand this. I can cut two... Sorry.
One at a time.
I can do a perfect shchita.
Yes.
And cut the two.
I can't.
And leave the animal alive?
No, what I'm saying is if you
I have a way to both of them.
Right. So all I'm saying is if you maintain the blood connection to the brain, and you cut your trachea and you cut your esophagus, you can still be alive.
Yes, I'm questioning our concept of shchita.
I'm telling you the concept of shchita. The shchita is, it's not possible. Based upon the laws of shchita, you can't go in. You cannot dig into shchita. Shchita has to be a flat blade. You can't press on shchita. Based upon the fact
let's say I find a way to get in there. And
it's not possible. I'm telling you, it's not possible. It's not possible. It's not based upon the requirements of shchita that the blade can't be covered. The blade can't be it can't be a twisted blade. The blade can't have a hook on it. All of these things make the shchita puzzle.
Let's say I do it with the hook on it.
Then the shchita is not shchita. There are 5 very important laws in terms of how shchita has to be done. It can't be covered. You can't press on it. It can't come underneath. So in other words, all the way shchita is done, it's not possible to shech the animal without cutting the carotid artery. It's not possible. It's not possible. That's why anytime you see a shchita, there is a lot of blood. There is a lot of blood.
Yeah.
But
okay.
So the question is still, why was shchita presented like that was?
Shchita was presented.
Basically, the decisive act, what matters really, is not mentioned.
So the answer is because what you're really doing as well when you do that, you slice the carotid artery, and you also slice, by the way, the nerves going up to the brain. So the brain doesn't feel anything. In other words, It happens to be that the way that you can determine if the shechita was done correctly or not is if you cut the two simanim, you cut the trachea and the esophagus. But when that happens, when you cut the trachea and esophagus, you've also cut the carotid arteries. You cut also the nerve endings. So the nerves, so the brain is not able to communicate, or brain is not able to feel at that point. Now, what you're not doing is you're not cutting the neck, you're not cutting the spine. So there is actually, the brain is still able to communicate to the body, but because the blood pressure goes down, the brain dies very quickly. Almost instantaneously, because it needs constant blood flow. All I'm simply trying to say, what I'm trying to say is, before I take your question, Albert, is that the fact the circulatory system is so vital. So in Chazal, remember, the Torah doesn't tell us how to do shechita. Torah talks about shechting an animal. The exact details of how shechita is done is found in the oral law. It's found in Masechet Chulin, which is very detailed how it has to be done. There are tons and tons of laws. That's why you and I are not trained shachtim. You have to be trained to be a sheichet. You need to know how to do shechita properly. It's a very specific specialty, because it's a very complex kind of thing. There are a lot of things can be puzzled. But the actual shechita itself, what I'm trying to say, is not only because you're cutting the two. For example, a person can have a feeding tube put in, and a person can have a tracheotomy. Right, a person who can't breathe, is having difficulty, they will cut a hole in the trachea to breathe through that. If there's a congestion or the throat becomes blocked, let's say there's an allergic reaction and the throat closes up, so a person cannot breathe through the throat. One emergency response is you do a tracheotomy where you bypass the throat. And then a person who can't swallow, they can put a feeding tube in. They put a feeding tube anywhere in, it's going to go down. You usually put the feeding tube in the stomach. So it's not. So you could have a situation where theoretically those two things would be cut, and the person yet could still be connected. I can't imagine how it could happen, but it's possible. But that would not be shechita. Shechita has to cut them all. Okay. Robert?
No, I'm sorry. I'm just going to ask it from practical. Have you seen it done? Yeah.
I've seen shechita. Yes, I've seen shechita with birds. I've seen shechita with animals. Shechita with animals is probably one of the most. It's almost like compared to Dante's Inferno of Hell. Okay, because I saw it with steers in many years ago in a Schlachthus in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And the animal is brought in. The animal, in this case, they had him like in a harness where the neck is pulled up. So then they rinse it off.
He's upside down?
No, it's not. It was not the upside down one. That was outlawed in the United States. That's just considered too much star balachayim. The animal comes in. It's in like a pen. Yeah. It is constrained. The neck is pulled back.
Somebody pulls it up.
There's a mechanism. There's a mechanism that holds it. So let's say I'm the animal. The animal's neck is pulled up, not unreasonable, but this way the sheichet can get to it. And then the sheichet comes. They hose it down to make sure there's no gunk on it. The knife doesn't get stuck, and then they shecht it, and the blood flies all over the place. So it's and I remember this is this is an industrial situation. Every guy's walking around with hard hats and the shachtim as well. They're wearing all the protective gear. And then as this done, when it is done, the first thing the sheichet does is he actually puts his hand into the cavity. He feels around. This is the first call. It's called b'dikas pnim. They put their hand in to see if there are any deformities inside the lungs and inside the body cavity.
With his hands?
Yes, he puts his hands in. That's the first check. Okay, then immediately as that happens, the animal was yanked up by the back. It was already, it's been shackled, and the animal's dead. So it pulls it up.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Right. They actually, at that point when the animal's dead, they detach the lungs, the whole lungs and the trachea are pulled out, because then they check the lungs. The lungs have to be checked for kashrus. So they take the lungs and they put them on top of what is the equivalent of a air pump. Right? You put the lung, you fill it up, and then you fill up the lungs, and you see does it hold air? Because what makes an animal non-kosher if there are holes in the lungs, if it's not airtight, or there are sometimes adhesions. You can't see the adhesions until the lung is inflated. Right. Meanwhile, the animal is already going down the assembly line. It was actually a very impressive thing, as you see. It's made a roshem. It was probably about
5-6 liters of blood per animal.
It's being spilled all over. It's constantly being hosed down. So there's rivers of blood and rivers of water, and it's like
so much blood.
Right. So, but anyway, that's but the animal doesn't feel it. It looks bad, right? That moment, the animal itself is really.
Time for a break.
Sorry.
Time for a barbecue.
Okay, tell me when it gets too graphic. Okay.
Yes.
So at that point, the animal is really in animal heaven, so to speak.
Yeah.
But the animal doesn't feel it. But the animal is already being processed. I mean, and what happens is, and this is in a good shlachtos, what happens is, as the animal is running down the assembly line or running down the chain line, so what happens? It gets
By
cut
his hind legs, I guess.
pulled up by its back, right? The animal is already cut into two sides of beef. I remember seeing there was one guy whose job was he was on a platform that went up and down. There's an assembly line, so as the animal goes by, he just has this big chainsaw. Bzz, bzz, this is what he does the whole day. By the time, meanwhile they're checking the lungs, right? And by the time the animal has gone through the end of the process, reached the end of the line, they already determined is the animal kosher or is the animal not kosher.
If it's kosher, it stays.
If it's kosher, it stays. If it's not
kosher,
kosher, it goes on to a non-kosher distributor who will sell it off as non-kosher. So that's how it's done, so that there's really no loss. So that's how it's done with ophos, with birds. It's smaller.
Yeah.
Also with birds, there's something called kisui adam. You have to cover the blood, right? We don't do kisui adam with behemoth, with large animals. We do it with chayot, and we do it with ophot. We do it with wild animals such as deer venison and such as birds, but we don't do it with. But the Torah does not want us to do it with behemoth. And the Ramban says the reason is because most of the behemoth were brought on the mizbeach, were types of animals brought on the mizbeach, and part of the blood was used to sprinkle on the mizbeach. So it's not an idea to cover it. Whereas for the birds, there are only two types of birds that are used for karbanot: torim b'nei yonah, pigeons, and turtle doves. Most other kosher fowl cannot be karbanot. You can't use chickens to bring for a karban. You can't use a lot of the domesticated fowl. A lot of the kosher fowl can't be done for karbanot. And wild animals can't be done for karbanot. So therefore, these two animals, we take the blood and we cover it, almost like giving a sign of respect. So that's something special, which is not done with animals, which is not done with steer and bulls and cows, and therefore, or sheep for that matter, or goats if you were slaughtering goats, and therefore when you go to a shlachtos like this, there's rivers of blood because you don't have to cover the blood. Okay.
Yeah, I find it amazing because we take such care to make sure that the meat that we buy does not have blood in it, and
right.
Yet the other nations, they use blood as
Correct.
what they eat.
True. Correct.
It's amazing.
Right.
They even
Correct.
make beer out of it.
Right, that's right.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. They have a tribe, Zulus in Africa, where they cut the vein, they put a little like a tap,
And
then they bring it. They get. It's amazing. They get milk. They milk the thing, and then they bring it to the blood, and they fill it up, and that ferments and it makes a beer.
I don't know.
How
But
come we eat the blood of fish?
so that's an excellent question. How come we don't shecht fish?
Yeah.
Notice how I answer one question with another question. So why don't we shecht fish? Because the Torah seems to talk about some shechting animals as animals. When it talks about, I don't know, it talks about basar. I guess basar is not considered fish here.
We didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about it.
What, shechting fish or blood of fish? I don't know why. Why it looks like it's not included.
I give my explanation.
Yes.
Because all the animals we shecht, they don't eat each other. Cow doesn't eat cow. Okay? Fish is only one.
They eat.
Small fish.
Okay.
Oh, that's good.
And therefore?
That's the reason.
Then it shouldn't be
we
kosher.
believe the shecht. The shecht, the way we give the life, easy in the animal. They don't feel it. The shecht, you don't feel it. We sell them.
So
But we kill the fish. Anything, don't care. Right. Because you don't care about it. That's the reason.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, there you go. Okay.
My explanation.
That's it.
Okay.
According to
Right, but they're not only we don't shecht fish, we don't even really have a way to kill fish.
the
Right.
pig with a bowling pin.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, the carp in the bathtub. The carpet.
That's right, the carpet.
I never saw the carpet in the bathtub. My father told me when he was going out with my mother, they did have that in the lower side.
For the kids. For the kids.
Not for the kids. Not for the kids. Not for I'm talking about a fish in the bathtub. That was for the gefilte fish for Shabbos. You went to the fishmonger, you got the fish, you didn't want to kill the fish, you had to get rotten. So you put it in the bathtub, you filled the bathtub and it swam around.
Stories of my grandparents.
I've seen it.
It's a true story. My father told me he's going out with my mother, he's going out with my mother to be, right? And he's in the bath, he goes to the bathroom and he's sitting there and he hears up a splashing. And then next to him, he's sitting there, on the break and he's looking up at him, has two sets of eyes, one set of eyes. Okay. Well, okay. At any rate, let's look at this Ramban. Where the Ramban is going to give us a number of reasons why the prohibition of blood is prohibited. Now, we've all had this in this visceral response that it's prohibited, and it's the lifeblood. It's not the soul as we talk about a soul in a human being, of course, but it's somehow connected with the vitality of a person. And as I've tried to say to you, when the blood stops flowing, the person cannot be alive. That's immediately, there's lysis, there's death of cells, if they're not connected, not being brought nutrients by the blood, or they're not being brought oxygen, and then carbon monoxide is not being taken away, because all cells will take in oxygen as well as nutrients and give off CO2. So the Ramban offers four answers. It's 1711. Do we have the right page? 17 XVII.
The other way, no?
I can't. Maybe I'm going back. 1711 is in the Ramban. He has the page number. It should be on the bottom. Yud Zayin Yud Aleph. Matzata?
No, I don't know.
1711.
17. Oh. 11.
17.
Here.
The Seif, I thought the page you mean.
No. Okay, we're good?
Can't find the... Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. You have it, Jeff?
No.
1711?
That was a good year. 17.
Oh, here.
38.
14, where's 11?
We're right here.
Is it here?
Page 12.
That's 14.
I was on the original page.
There we go. Okay, good. There we go. Okay. Kinever Shabasar Badamhu, says the Ramban. Okay, it's a long piece of Ramban. We'll see how much we can get through of it, okay? Okay, Kinever Shabasar Badamhu, Vani Natad Lechem Al Mizbeach. So Mashmut HaKatuv Hazeh, the meaning of this pasuk, according to the Ramban, is what's the reason for the prohibition about Adam? Sheyaseh Lanu Adam, that we are prohibited to consume blood. Why, says the Ramban? Because the Ramban starts as follows. The blood was to be put onto the altar, and in the sacrificial rites were to bring forgiveness for us. So therefore, if the blood was to be put on the altar, then the blood belongs to the Almighty. This is a very unique approach. It's not what you would normally think. In other words, he starts backwards. You normally say, well, because blood is prohibited and blood is so special, it's put on the altar. Ramban says, no, the Torah already told us is for God, and therefore it's meant to bring forgiveness for us because the Karban is taking our place. If the Karban is taking my place and bringing forgiveness for me, I should have been punished, I should have been killed. And what am I doing besides putting certain parts of the animal on the altar? I'm also sprinkling some of the blood on the altar or pouring it on the altar. So that shows that's the uniqueness of the animal, the specificity of its vitality, and that's to bring to me forgiveness. So that indicates that blood is somehow sacred for God. V'chelak Hashem, and therefore really a part that belongs to Hashem. In the same way, kitam achel, the same way there are certain fats that are prohibited to eat, and those fats were the fats that were put on the altar. So they put the fatty parts of the animal on the altar to burn. It burned nicely. Fat will burn nicely. It showed the animal was a healthy animal, was a good animal, so therefore certain fats are prohibited, and the blood is prohibited. So that's the first approach to the Ramban. Unusual, we all have to admit, right? V'im naksheh. And then the Ramban says, but I have one question. Why then would the blood of birds that are not brought on the altar, because the only birds that are brought on the altar are turtle doves and pigeons, and why would the blood of wild animals, which there are no sacrifices of wild animals, all the sacrifices are either cows, sheep, or goats, all the domesticated types of animals. So why then, if it's about bringing the animal, these blood on the altar to God, and therefore it's sacred for God, why can I not take from the blood of the animals that can't be sacrifices? What would make them sacred? So if you ask that question, Nidche, the Shoel will answer to respond. Says the Ramban, the reason is because blood looks like blood. If I were to say that you can take blood of deer and you can't take blood of let's say sheep, you would get confused which blood is which blood. You wouldn't really tell. Blood looks like blood. You're not going to give it a DNA test. And even though chelev, there's really you don't make this kind of difference that the chelev is only prohibited with animals, domesticated animals, and not with wild animals. Nonetheless, because chelev is nikar, the fats are different between wild animals and domesticated animals. Wild animals have less fats because they're more mobile. When do you get fat, guys? You get fat when you sit around and do nothing. Yes, you don't exercise well. So it happens to be the domesticated animals are more sedentary. The wild animals, such as deer, it's a very non-fatty animal. Venison is actually very stringy, they told me. It's very gamey. Does not have the same kind of fatty, schmaltzy taste that domesticated meat has. And that's the same thing that comes for chelev as well. So for chelev, you can tell the difference between the meat and fats of a domesticated animal from the meats and fats of a wild animal. You couldn't tell the difference between the blood of one to the blood of the other unless you really subjected it chemically to really analysis.
And the only reason, Moshe, this matters is because, besides the history of what happened then, is because of the coming of the third Beit HaMikdash, correct? Because why else?
Well, it was given when there was a Mishkan and there was a said Beit Mikdash. The fact that we don't have a Beit Mikdash is much later. In other words, this law was given to the Jewish people in the wilderness. It's given at Sinai when they are building the Mishkan, when these are daily things that are being there. So therefore, because it is something, what the Ramban is saying it a little bit backwards. We normally say blood is prohibited, and therefore you put it on the altar. Ramban is saying, no, you put it on the altar, therefore that shows it's sacred, therefore we don't have it. Once it's sacred, when you can't have it, if you don't have a Beis Mikdash, does not change the status of the blood.
No, but that's not my point. My point is the last time this was done, which was the Beit HaMikdash, where there were animal sacrifices, was about 2,000 years ago.
Yes, correct.
Now, the Jews have been less than 2,000 years. So
it was set in place.
God's fine with that.
Right, because any day you can rebuild the Beit Mikdash. Right.
That's my point, right? This is all because of the coming of the third Beit HaMikdash, right?
Okay.
Yes?
Yes, or this is all because it was given to us, and the laws that were given when there was a Beit Mikdash are eternal. So even laws that we cannot do, or that we're prevented from doing because we don't have a Beit Mikdash, are still laws.
Okay, right? But it's a law we can do.
What makes this unusual? Here's I think what you're struggling with, or what you're not struggling with. I want to make you struggle with it. The law of bringing the dam on the mizbeach is something very unique. Not just to Beit Mikdash; it's unique to geography, to Jerusalem, to the Beit Mikdash location. The prohibition of drinking blood or consuming blood is all places. So in other words, it's not just about remembering the Beit Mikdash. It's saying the prohibition was not only given to Jerusalem, or not only given to the tent, the tabernacle. It was given for all Jews in all locations. It happened to be when the Jews received this, they were in one location surrounding the tabernacle. But wherever the Jews went, even if they went to Israel and there was a Beit Mikdash in Jerusalem and they went 3 times a year, or there was a Mishkan in Shiloh, they went 3 times a year, the rest of the year, 24/7, they cannot consume blood. So it's not only about the fact that we're going to rebuild the Beit Mikdash. It's even when they had a Beit Mikdash and they were never even close to it.
According to our Ramban,
First John and Ramban, yes?
Ramban, yes. It's like that. Now we're allowed to have the blood.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
No, but
according to Ramban,
you guys are on the same side. You're teaming up against me. Okay? No. But listen, what I said to Jeff, and I believe this, is the laws that were given, even if you don't have a Beit Mikdash, still remain. The problem is you don't have a Beit Mikdash. Doesn't mean the law doesn't apply. The law of speeding, and you can't do more than 100 kilometers an hour on the provincial highways, applies even if I live in a rinky-dinky backwater town in northern Ontario. I never see a provincial highway. Yeah. It never applies to me. It doesn't happen. But if I were to be on that, I couldn't do it. So what the law here says is because this blood was sanctified for God. The fact that we can't bring it to God because we don't have a Beit Mikdash doesn't mean it's not sanctified. The blood is sanctified. Except I don't have an outlet to put on the Mizbeach. But that doesn't detract from the rest of the blood that still is prohibited to me because it's sanctified for God. That's the first approach to the Rambam. It's a very unusual response. Because as we all pointed out, because it looks like it doesn't apply most of the time, the application, the original application was limited. Also, my living in Toronto has nothing to do with my being in Jerusalem in the Beit Mikdash, with or without a Beit Mikdash. Would make sense to me. You could say this is a law that should apply to Israel. Some laws apply to Israel, like Trumot and Masrot. So maybe the blood should apply to Israel. So the Ramban would say, but you couldn't tell the difference between blood in Israel and blood over the border, right? No, so if I want to make sure I don't consume blood, it is written as a flat prohibition. All blood is prohibited because some blood of the domesticated animals and a few of the birds were brought on the altar when there was a Beit Mikdash.
What about when a person orders a rare steak at a restaurant?
So there always will be body fluids.
Yeah.
Right. So the answer is we remove the blood, but we're really removing the blood that has come out of that has been separated into the organs. In other words, there's probably still blood that remains itself in the flesh. What we're doing is we're removing blood that can be separated from the animal. When you actually cook it and you see the redness, that's actually the redness coming not just really from the blood, it's coming from the actual animal, coming from the cells. Okay?
The most delicious.
But a menaka has to take out the...
Right. The trebring has to be done. Trebring, we didn't even talk about it. We talked about shrita. Trebring is very complex.
What's trebring?
A nikur, taking out the veins and arteries.
Oh.
So I don't want to get too far off topic here. As you know, we don't eat the hindquarters of animals. We Ashkenazim, or we in North America, we in a lot of Western countries don't. In Israel they do, because in the hindquarters have a lot of prohibited fats. And it's very difficult to remove all of the fats from the back end of the animal. Also, the sciatic nerve. There's different things. There are veins, and there are also fats. There are two things that are prohibited on an animal, on a domesticated animal. One is the large veins that you have to pull out. There's also the gid hanosha, the sciatic sinew, which has to be pulled out, and then there are also fats. There are prohibited fats which have been passed along by tradition, which they are, and it's a very complex process. Where's most of your fat? Most of my fat is in the bottom half of me. It's right here and right here. This is the top half of me. This is the front quarter. Right? This is the forequarter. This is the rear end. This is the bottom end of the animal, the back end of the animal, the hindquarters. That's just where fat tends to accumulate. It accumulates on the stomach and accumulates around the intestines. Accumulates inside of the same way it accumulates in us. We're not animals, but we are animals. We're mammals. We are mammals, and we're very similar, except guess what? We sit up straight, we walk around on two legs, and we use our brains more, hopefully. Most of us, most of the time. Some of us, some of the time. Few of us, a few of the time. Anyways, so the bottom line is, the bottom line is you have to take out veins, you have to take out fats, and you have to take out the sciatic sinew. That's very complex. But having said that, even the forequarter, the front of the animal, you still have to take out major veins and some of the fats. And that's very complex. And I had someone show this to me. I once went to a butcher. I said, I'm not a butcher. I'm not trained to be a butcher, but I want to see this one time. So he was actually very kind. He showed me how he did it. He took a whole piece of beef, a whole piece of an animal, and he showed me piece by piece how he went through it. It took him a good chunk of 45 minutes just to say, and he pointed out to me, here is how he was trained, and here how you do it. Some people only take this, some people take that. And he said, if you don't do it carefully, if you don't do it well, what ends up happening, you chop up the meat, you make a big mess. You have to take out this vein from here to here. Now, if you don't know where it is and you don't know how to snap it out, right? It's like having any tradesman. If you don't know how to put the screws into a piece of furniture, you make a blunt out of it. You make a mess out of it. So the same thing. If you don't know how to pull it out in here, what ends up happening? It snaps in the middle, and you got to go dig for the rest of it. So that's a separate part of, once again, removing. And part of the trebring, part of the nikur, is removing veins and arteries, which also contain the blood. Okay.
The first shot of the Ramban, I can say that in diaspora we do it with Zechel HaMikdash.
We could, right. Or it's more than Zechel HaMikdash, it's also, the whole thing is Zechel HaMikdash, and it's really as well the fact that blood looks like blood. Right? In other words, what am I going to say? With the blood, I can have blood here before I get on the plane in Toronto, and I can't have blood when I get off. It's so confusing.
Right.
Anyways, that's the first answer. Well, let's move to the second answer, otherwise we won't go through this Ramban. Ramban answer number 2. So now the Ramban quotes the Rambam, our good friend Rambam Maimonides. V'yorav kosab b'mor nevuchim. The Rambam, he calls him the Rav, the rabbi, writes in Mor Nevuchim, the Guide to Perplex. In the third book of the Guide to Perplex, the Rambam has many reasons for mitzvot. Many of them look to be historical. Many of them, he suggests that many of the mitzvot that were given to the Jews in the wilderness were done so because the Almighty wanted to separate them from the practices that they had seen. Now, you talk about people that consume blood. Zulus and so forth. Look what he says here. He says the exact opposite. Because the Kasdim, the Chaldeans who lived in Babylonia, where Abraham came from, or Kasdim, they hated blood and they thought it was tamei. So they really didn't eat it. However, there were some who did. But those who wanted to involve in necromancy and to be able to receive communication from shedim, from spirits and so forth, they thought the best way to do this, for them to get this kind of unique spiritual experience, was by consuming the blood of animals. So this is the society that the Jewish people were aware of and grew up in, that was around them, not in Egypt so much as maybe other nations, that the holy people, the priests, would consume the blood, and this they felt maybe they would allow them to connect with other kinds of mediums and spirits. And the old Torah wanted many times to destroy the foundations of their foolishness by turning around their logic, their thoughts. And therefore, the Torah says, for you Jews, even if you want to be holy, when you want to be holy, you cannot consume dam, because dam is, what they're doing is not only stupid, but it's you have to do the opposite of what they're doing. Right, go on nefesh. And in fact, you take the blood and you sprinkle it on the altar. And you pour it and you pour it onto the altar for forgiveness. And therefore, because this was done as a idolatrous rite, the priests would consume the blood when they would go into their tantrums and rites. Therefore, the Torah says, therefore, God says, the person that consumes dam, I will be angry with them. Because the term that's used when God says, I'm really angry, is a term that's really reserved when people do acts that are associated with idolatrous shrines. K'moshe Amar, the same way God says, a person who would sacrifice his son to the Moloch god, so the same terms, I will put my face, my anger against this person. Anytime the term used that God is angry at this person means that worshiping idols. He's doing an act or a type of avodah zarah. There's no other mitzvah that God talks about being angry or putting his wrath against the person. And you know what? So what's the second answer of the Rambam? The second answer of the Rambam is, why is blood prohibited? This was a way to wean the Jews away from what they saw around, give them their own identity, their own religion. Therefore, these priests consume blood as part of their idolatrous rites. You may not consume blood.
I am a jealous God.
I'm a jealous God.
One of the commandments, one of the things he says, God is,
don't worship.
Jealous of God.
Right. But many of the mitzvot, therefore, are also ways to get the Jewish people away from what they saw, which they used to. Remember, these are people who just built a golden calf. Right? So
this is the Ramban's?
This is Rambam. Ramban quoting Rambam.
So, we didn't get to Ramban yet.
We got one Ramban was the first one about bringing on the altar.
Now we are still developing.
Now we know he brings four reasons. One is his own reason about, first, because it was on the altar, therefore it's holy, it's sacred to God, you can't have blood. The second thing, it's a way to wean the Jewish people away from what they saw the idolatrous shrines doing, which was to consume blood to believe they connected to their spirits and their demons. So in order to make sure that you don't fall into this mess, that you become an idolatrous people and you do what they're doing, because many times, see one, do one. We see what they're doing. It looks good. It's very nice, very pretty, wonderful. You see a beautiful church. You say, well, I should go in there. I should be part of this.
Sure.
So therefore, if you should know this is the antithesis of what you're going to do. You not only should not do their idolatrous shrines, you are not permitted to eat blood. So if you ever think you can become holy like they become holy, lahavdil, by eating blood, you may not eat blood. It's prohibited.
But I saw that Rambam, on the contrary, was holding that we got the korbanos.
Correct. They're different.
To
yes.
Allow us a transition.
Yes. The Ramban and Rambam are not saying the same thing.
Right. But now the Rambam seems to contradict himself. The other view that says the korbanos were only to ease us away from.
Right.
So far we're only talking Rambam.
No, we had the first. No.
First, forget the first. In the second pshat, we are only talking about
Rambam, correct.
We didn't get to the Ramban's view on what Rambam said.
Correct, right. Okay, we only did the Rambam. Now the Ramban says...
How can Rambam have two views? Like one says that it was to ease us.
No. No. What I started with about the fact that it's on the altar makes it holy was Ramban Nachmanides. Now he brings Rambam...
No. I'm not talking about that at all. The Rambam itself apparently has a view in Mishnah Torah, I think.
About Korbanot in general.
About Korbanot in general.
Yes.
The Ramban takes big issues there.
Yes.
That Korbanot were just to ease us away from the practices of the surrounding nations.
Yes, he doesn't mention that here.
Right. So not only that doesn't mention, but this view of the Rambam that Ramban presents it here, it contradicts that.
No, it doesn't. One is talking about Korbanot, one is talking about Dam.
Please.
One is talking about Korbanot, one is talking about Dam.
Right, but
so
about the same, the practices of the surrounding nations.
Correct. So the Rambam writes in many mitzvot. The Rambam writes in many mitzvot. The reason for many mitzvot was we saw things, we could have been influenced by them, therefore the Almighty gave us mitzvot to pull us away from what we saw. So we saw gradually, or not gradually, boom, directly, that we don't fall in. I'm not going to talk about all the other mitzvot, it's going to confuse us. I'm not going to talk about Korbanot, let's just confuse the issue here. But Rambam writes in terms of the prohibition for Dam was to pull us away from the fact that the holiness of the nations, the holy people, the shrinal priests of the holy nations would consume blood as part of their sacrificial rites, as part of what they ate, as part of a way to consume the blood of the animal, which was life, which would allow them to get beyond their life, to communicate with their gods and spirits and who knows what they thought they saw. And therefore I want to tell you, if you're a holy people and you're a different way, you're prohibited to have blood. Don't do what they're doing.
I get that, but Dan, question for you quickly. You mentioned the Mishnah Torah. Rambam said that we sacrifice animals just so that we're different than the... Is that what you're saying?
No.
Tell me. I'm going to look at it.
On the contrary, if I remember correctly, his view of the korbanos was, I can't take a people, everybody is doing korbanos, everybody is sacrificing animals. I can't just take them and say, you can't do korbanos anymore. Right? So then it was like a concession to the Jewish people.
Right.
Okay, you can do korbanos. This is how you do them.
Correct. So the Rambam
overnight.
Okay, I don't want to get into the short version. Is Rambam's the Rambam is talking about Dam. The Rambam is talking about Dam. The other Rambam,
you're still Dam korbanos.
No, so they're two different things, and I don't want to confuse them. Okay, we'll talk a little later. Just have to go on. Okay. So at any rate, Ramban quotes Rambam. And he says, and believe it or not, he says, I like this. This is good. However, there's one problem with the Rambam's suggestion about why blood is prohibited. The Bible doesn't seem to say that. The Bible says, what's the reason for why you can't have blood? The Bible tells us the reason. The Chumash tells us the reason. Shehem yomut tamid b'tam isur tells us always ki nefesh kol basar damo b'nafshohu. The life of every animal is in its blood. The blood is the life force of the animal. And it says again, ki nefesh abasar badamhu. It says multiple times, and it says again in Mishnah Torah and Dvarim, rak chazak leviltiach ol adam. Be careful you don't consume blood. Ki adam hu ha-nefesh v'lo tuchal nefeshim abasar. The blood is the life. So your Rambam is telling me of the animal. The Rambam is telling me don't consume the blood because you get confused and you may run after the priests who are the alien religions and you think they're doing good stuff and they're really bad and evil. Therefore, that's why dam is prohibited. No, the Bible tells us clearly it's about life force. It's about the life of the animal. So therefore, the Rambam makes sense logically, but doesn't seem to be oisgehalten, doesn't seem to fall in, doesn't seem to be supported by the verbiage of what the Torah seems to say is the reason.
So, Moshe, when you mentioned when a person sees blood, they're revolted. So are we saying that's a visceral?
I think it's visceral.
Soulful?
I don't know where it comes from. I'm not sure.
Is that our soul that looks at that?
When you see blood spilled, when you see blood,
it shows that someone's been injured or hurt. Otherwise,
is that our soul? Is that our soul that feels that?
It's not your. I don't know what it. I don't know what it is. I'm just saying that's why I use the term visceral. It's an inherent response.
But why?
Why? I don't know if it's why. I don't know if a child looks that way or children have seen blood. Children have seen that refers to pain. When you cut yourself many times, it's painful. Is it recognizing that people die when blood is spilled? They have not been to slaughterhouses. You don't have to go to a slaughterhouse to feel this way. You recognize right away this is something inherent, that the barrier around the body has been breached.
That's right.
The wall has been broken through. right? So they won't. Many times a kid will go, "Oh, I'm bleeding, I'm bleeding." There's a little scratch. "Oh, I'm bleeding, oh." Right?
Unless they're hemophiliac.
But where does the kid learn that from?
Well, this is the thing.
They learned it from another kid in kindergarten. The other kid, but Johnny said the same thing.
Maybe they didn't. Maybe that's an innate feeling from us that comes deep within us.
Yeah, maybe it's an instinct. Maybe it's a spiritual thing, or maybe it's an instinct. I don't know. Okay. I'm just telling you.
Is blood also the life force of a human being? Yeah.
I mean,
it's everything.
When we talk about the animal,
if you lose blood,
it's everything.
If you lose blood, you're in trouble.
No, but according to the thing, it says that blood is the life force of an animal.
Yeah.
And what is the life force of a human being?
So you have two life forces. You have a physical life force, and you have a spiritual life force.
Right, and that's my question.
It's your physical life force.
Your spiritual life force is not your blood.
Can't be.
But in other words, that's why I keep trying to explain when the Torah talks about the blood being the life of the animal. Why is it considered the life of the animal? What does it mean? So in my mind, this is really just me thinking. Maybe you have a better interpretation. It's because blood is the circulatory system that connects the entire animal. If that stops, then the animal's in trouble.
It's the same thing for a human being.
Yeah, correct. Yes, true.
Then we're saying that the animal does not have a soul, so therefore
animals
there's no spirit.
There is a soul in the animal that teaches the animal how to do things. That has instinct. Some of it is learned. Ramban will talk about it if we ever get to this today. Right? Dogs, you can build a relationship with a dog. Your dog loves you. You throw your dog out, the dog will come back. Where does that come from? How does the dog know to do that? The dog has some kind of brain or some kind of life force that allows it to make these kind of decisions. Some of it is instinct, some of it is survival. Right?
Soul is neshama.
There's nefesh behemi. There's a nefesh behemi and the nefesh ruchani. There's a spiritual life force, and there's a physical life force, an animalistic life force, which is more than simply the sum total of the parts. In other words, it's not an animal. The animal's dead. When an animal dies, what happens when an animal dies? The blood doesn't run out. The animal just dies.
Doesn't every object in the universe have a soul?
This
table has a soul.
I don't know.
No. It's not
Maybe.
a soul. That's a
I don't know. Maybe, but it's surely a low type of soul. I'm not sure how this table has a soul.
Is that why Moshe couldn't hit the water and the earth, because it actually has a soul to it?
Maybe in Kabbalah it does, possibly. I don't know. I'm getting beyond what I know. Okay, let's go. So so we have two answers. Are we good so far?
Yep.
Okay. The Roish and the Farish Batamli Suro. And the Ramban says, now I want to tell you, I want to give you what I think is really the reason. In other words, he gave you an initial reason, now he gives you his reason. And here he gets down to life force. Ki Hashem Barak, go back to the history of the world. Ki Hashem Barak kol nevoim atachtonim l'tzarech adam. God made all creatures, lower creatures to serve man. Man is the pinnacle creation. Ki hu levado bohem makir et baro. Only man can recognize God. So man is the connection to God, and the animals are the connection to man. Even though man is the connection to God and man controls all living forces here, nonetheless, when Adam and Eve were first created, they could not eat meat. They were not allowed to eat anything except that which grew, only plants, only vegetation. Do we know this? You've heard this? Okay. Lo bali nefesh, not animals that have a soul, they're living, so to speak, as we call it. I mean, trees live, but trees don't have a brain. One of the most fascinating things is how a tree knows when to turn off and a tree knows when to turn on. I know.
Not only that,
that's right.
Tree know if you want him grow or you want him chop him, he feel it. It's like that.
Maybe a tree.
What I mean about the soul.
Right. Okay. So the tree is not the same thing as a dead table. Okay. The tree is not the same as the table is chopped down. The tree has a soul.
Not a divine soul, Moshe. I read that every object in the universe has a soul to it.
Okay.
Not a divine soul, but there's a soul to it.
But this was part of a tree, or this was part of petroleum.
Anyway.
Okay. Anyway, so initially when man was created, he could only have what was called vegetation, someach. As it says in Parashat Beis, chapter 1, God says, I'm giving to you all plants that grow. And however, when the human beings in the world were saved because of the schut, the merit of Noach, and Noach brought the korbanot to God. That was why he took 7 animals, 7 kosher animals, and God was appeased by this, and he said there will be no more floods. He allowed for the first time that man can slaughter and eat living animals. Why? Why? Because it looks like that man was able to be in control of all of creation. Now man has done something to save the entire world. Anything that moves can be now to eat, like Gerek Esav, like the grass which grew. I've given you everything.
That's not true. That's not true.
What's not true?
It says
Remes. Yeah.
That every living thing is food for you, but it's not true.
Sure it is. For Noach it is true.
Pork, you can't eat
for Noach could eat pork. Noach could eat pork.
No, but it says every living thing should be food for you.
This is God speaking to Noach. Noach could eat pork.
Oh.
Noach. He could eat anything. He could eat bugs. Okay, the prohibition about kosher and non-kosher comes later.
It came later.
So in other words, however, one second, let me just finish up. So therefore, what he cannot hear, what Noach cannot have, he cannot have Eiver Menachai. He can't take a limb off of a living animal and eat it. The animal has to be dead. Now, how you kill the animal, how you process the animal, it's not about shechita. You can clop it on the head too. If Noach could have clopped it on the head to eat it. But at this point is the transition and the change that really when man was created, he only ate vegetation. When man saves the world and all of the world now becomes beholden to man, to Noach and to his descendants, therefore he is now given complete dominion, complete control over everything, including processing it and including eating it. Later on, we are limited which animals we can eat. Question, Chanoch? Noach.
Because he saved because he saved the animal, not really now he can eat it.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. It shows that he has control. Everything was saved because of him. Yes, yeah. That's how the Ramban is saying it. You can argue.
No,
okay?
I don't argue.
Rav Kook wrote a very interesting book.
Yes, correct. He said the future will be vegetarian.
We'll be all vegetarian.
Okay, maybe. I don't know if he wrote a book. He says wrote certain things. I'm not sure it's a full book. So anyway, why kichayotum be'avur adam? Because they're alive. The reason the animals survive was because of man. And therefore, hitir gufam asher uchay b'avur adam. And therefore, God permitted their lives, the lives of the animals, their flesh, in other words, their bodies, because of man. They now become subservient to man, to serve man in anything. Not just about taking animals and taking their skins and making a skin that you can sit in or something. It's about taking the animal, eating it. And also that their bodies or their souls will be brought as a kapara when they're brought before God, as on the altar. Not to eat it. But however, here's what they cannot do. I guess I mistranslated the last couple of words. Their life force is going to be for kapara, for forgiveness, when they're brought on the altar, not to eat the life force, because ein ro'i lebal nefesh yochel nefesh, and one soul can't eat another soul. Like you talked about the fish, we don't do that. Right.
He said about korbanot, he cannot eat korban, nefesh.
Correct. No, all the lives, all the nefashot, all belong to Hashem. Because all the souls are something that's not physical, so all the souls belong to Hashem. Both the soul of man and the soul of the animal. This is the lower kind of soul. It's all the same thing. This is a pasuk in Kohelet, as it says, like animals die, we die. We have one spirit. We have one life force to all of them, and therefore, because we all have life, so what is given to us to eat? We can eat the animal once it's no longer alive. I can't eat the animal alive. I can't eat the soul of the animal. So therefore, first of all, I can't have Eiver Menachai. I can't have a piece of an animal while it's still alive, because I'm now eating some of the animal while it's still alive. I don't have that right to do. I have a right to kill the animal, but while the animal is alive, I and the animal serve the Almighty together. And also, I can't take the force of the animal that actually is giving it life. Now, where is that force? Okay. And according to the proofs of the Greek philosophers or the Greek scientists, that and when God made Bereshit, first He made this very small life force. It's called Hiuli in Greek. It's like a mini creation, and from that creation, all other creation came. And from this life force goes out the life of every animal. And this is like in some regard, this is like the nefesh in the internal life of the animal. Therefore, every animal has this kind of life force that is more than simply the sum total of the parts. It's more than simply a heart that's pumping in an animal. Something is going on. We call it intelligence, we call it a brain, we call it thinking in a lower fashion, but animals do think, and that's really controlled by something that is ethereal. We don't know how to identify what this life force is. You can't put your hand on it. You put your hand on an animal, you can put your hand on the animal's head. You can't find the life force in there. The difference between life and death. The scary part when you see, if you ever see a person who is passed away, which is very rare, you suddenly realize that is the same person, except guess what? What's missing? The life force. How did the life force evaporate? Where did it go? That's the soul. You have a spiritual soul, you have a physical soul, an animal soul. And therefore the animal also has some kind of soul. And therefore the animal knows to run away from danger and to go after that which it will enjoy. And an animal has recognition of people who are around it, who are its friends. And loves them. Like dogs like their masters. How does the dog know to like its master? Who taught the dog to get to that it can be a pet? Who taught the dog that the master is going to feed it? Well, the master fed it once, but why does the dog keep coming back? Maybe the dog will be better when it goes out. And will recognize the people of their household. The dog recognizes people in the household, and as well same thing with pigeons, homing pigeons or pigeons that are raised, which are not as domesticated as dogs. They live in their pigeon coops. They fly around all day, and what happens at night? They come back to where their coop is. They're not even being fed. These are the person's pigeons. Have you ever seen people who raise pigeons? You don't see it anymore. Italians used to do it.
Rabbi, he said, כי אין לבעל נפש שאוכל נפש אחר.
Where are you reading from?
I read much before.
Yeah.
כי אין לבעל נפש.
אין ראוי לבעל נפש שיאכל נפש, yes?
I mean, we cannot eat somebody of a nefesh. If we can eat a behemah, why don't we eat a human being also?
Correct. In other words, it looks like that you cannot eat the life force of another animal. You can eat, once the animal is no longer alive, you can eat it, but you can't eat the animal. One person who's alive can't eat something else that's alive. One animal alive can't eat another animal alive, at least human beings. Carnivorous animals do.
Yeah. But they do it. It's called cannibalism.
Yes, they do it, but we don't do it. Correct. They broke the laws of Noah. Correct. And cannibalism, to some extent, was their belief that by ingesting their enemies, they would get stronger as well.
That's right.
So it wasn't only about eating. Sometimes cannibalism was survivalist, right? Those are some recent cases, but in most cases about eating your enemy's heart, right? And protecting you from his bad spirits or something. But that's getting off topic. At any rate, so therefore the blood is therefore seen as a part of the life force, which by the way means, and this is actually the radical part of what the Ramban is saying, and no one has really caught this, is that it looks like dam, according to this approach of the Ramban, was prohibited to Noach. Right? We have nowhere in Scripture that Noach is prohibited to eat blood. I already told you he doesn't have to do shchita. All he does, he can't eat the limb while it's still alive. But what the Ramban is saying is this prohibition that was given to Noach, the prohibition of blood was given to Noach at the same time that he was allowed to be able to eat animals. So God said you can eat the animals because you saved the animals, they're subservient to you, but one soul cannot eat another soul. One life force can't eat another life force. And where is the life force identified with? It is the blood. It's not really the life force, but it's that which connects all the pieces of the animal together. So blood becomes prohibited to Noach.
He also cannot eat the first blood because the first blood is Ever Nachai.
The first blood when it's killed?
Right, he's not dead yet. So
Okay, fine.
So
okay,
that first blood that comes out.
But
he cannot
even
eat
the
it.
second blood, the third blood, okay, the blood that keeps dripping afterwards, okay?
But he's not, Noah didn't allowed to eat blood.
So according to Ramban, it looks like that he could not eat blood.
From where?
From what the Ramban is saying. The Ramban is saying, nefesh lo ochel nefesh. That's what it looks like. Now the Ramban, back in Sefer in Parshas Noach, only says the only prohibition given to Noach at this point was Ever Menachai. The other prohibitions were before. Noach received the prohibition of Ever Menachai. The Ramban does not talk about him getting a prohibition of Dam. So, but based upon everything we just read in the last 10 minutes, it looks like the Ramban by logic would say that the prohibition of blood goes back to Noach. Ergo, Noach could not consume blood. The prohibition of blood goes back to Noach itself. Okay, I'm going to continue before we take the break. Okay, I want to finish this Ramban, and therefore. So the animals do have some kind of life force. Now we call that simply just being created as an animal. What does it mean? But it's more than simply just the sum total of its parts. It's not simply a heart. There's a brain that's working in conjunction with everything else. That's part of the nefesh behemi. So dogs recognize their masters. Yonim, pigeons recognize their masters and recognize those who are common with them. And therefore, and the other as well, we say yeshuv. And okay, this is the third answer. So the third answer is really that why can you not have blood? Because it goes back to the creation of Noach. Noach was allowed to eat animals, but was precluded from eating blood because one animal does not eat another animal, one life force does not eat another life force. Okay, that's the third piece. One more answer. Okay, the fourth answer is a little bit different. The fourth answer is, I'm not sure that you will agree with it. I'm not sure it's really medically correct, but it's good to read it.
But this goes back also, I'm sorry, to the fish thing.
Yeah, the fish eat fish. Okay.
One life force eats another life force.
Yeah, but animals don't. But they do actually.
Actually, they do.
Not kosher animals though. But right, carnivorous animals do eat carnivorous animals, but they don't swallow them. Actually, I won't say that. They do swallow them whole. Snakes swallow their prey whole. Right. There are other animals that probably swallow whole. Alligators swallow whole. Okay. Yep. So it may be that not fish are not unique, except that kosher fish may do the same thing as non-kosher fish. Okay, the last piece of the Ramban says basically, just tell you what it says in short, he says basically you are what you eat.
Yeah.
Okay?
Spiritually.
Well, spiritually and physically. You know, the cannibals who wanted to eat their enemy's heart because they felt it made them strong. Well, we don't do that. But basically, what you eat is really going to have an influence upon you. However, with one real caveat, the Ramban feels that somehow when you eat the flesh of an animal, it gets digested. Somehow he feels that blood does not get digested. Once again, that's why I say medically I have difficulty with this. Because medically blood is going to be digested, the proteins in blood will be digested, and does not simply pass through the system. He feels that if you ingest blood, it simply goes into your blood system. That's not really factually correct what we know about medical knowledge. But that's the fourth reason why the Ramban is going to suggest why blood is different than all the different parts of the animal. You can eat all the meat in the animal, right, but you can't eat the blood in the animal.
Maybe it's because it's liquid.
Because it's liquid, because he felt that, based upon the knowledge of his day, he felt that the liquid went into liquid, so blood went into blood.
And
right?
you urinated, and that was it.
Yeah. Correct. And when you urinated, it was not bread. Right. So it must have been that it simply went where to go, went into your blood system, which is not really true. Which is not true.
When somebody needs the blood and don't infuse the blood.
Yes.
So he's not eating the blood.
So.
But he can see another blood.
So there's nothing wrong with that.
It's not like drinking.
No, there's nothing wrong with transfusion. The only ones who think there's something wrong with transfusion, I believe, are Seventh-day Adventists.
Yeah?
Yes. They say they are opposed to transfusions, and there have been cases that have come up in the States. I don't know about Canada, where they've refused it, and they've been forced to actually, I believe, accept blood transfusions. Yeah. So that's one of these church and state issues that comes up in the States. But we don't believe that. We believe you can be saved. You can be saved with anything. You can put a pig's heart into you and save you, or pig's heart valve, I should say. So, anyways, and this, if we keep going, we're going to be in the anti-vaxxers group in a moment. Okay. So the last piece of the Ramban, Okay, let me, because I'll do it quickly, but just think it's important to know. So, whatever you eat becomes part of the person that enters into your flesh. And if you drink the blood, and I guess he's not doing this from a medical point of view, as I look at it now, maybe more of a spiritual. If you drink the blood, the blood of the animal becomes part of him, and he's looking at the problem of the blood. He's looking at the problem of the blood not being the blood of entering my blood, more as the life force of that animal enters my life force. If blood is seen as a symbol of the life force, right? If I drink the blood, let me retract what I said before. If I drink the blood, it's not that the blood goes into my blood; it's that the life force of the animal has now been included into my life force. Yeah. If I eat the meat, the meat becomes digested and becomes digested into proteins and carbohydrates and nutrients that enter into my system, and I live. If I drink blood, which is the life force part of the blood is going to become part of me, and now instead of becoming a human being, I become an animal.
Right, and that's how the Messiah think about that.
Who says that?
I mentioned Zulus, but I have to apologize. It's a Messiah.
Oh, the Messiah. Okay.
That's true, Moshe. Isn't that why we eat these kosher foods, because of the spiritual aspect?
Well, because they're domesticated, they're herbivorous, and therefore they are not attacking animals. They're humble. They're meeker types of animals. That's one of the reasons. By definition of having a split hoof and chewing its cud, you cannot be a carnivore. Because if you chew the cud, you need to be stable to eat and regurgitate and eat it again. If you have split hoofs, you surely can't claw down your prey. So that's true. That is indicative of that. And the same thing with the kosher birds. The kosher birds are not birds of prey. Anyway, so says the Ramban. Therefore, if you believe that the dam is the circulatory system, which is really the life force of the animal, by eating that, you will now ingest that into yourself. It becomes part of your heart. It means heart, not just the circulatory heart, your emotions. You become cruder and more baser. And you'll end up ingesting the life force of the animal. You'll become a cow. You'll feel like you'll feel like a goat. Here's what he says: that the blood doesn't really require digestion like all the other meats, which are digested completely. It will become absorbed into the body. It's a confusion here in my mind. Does it mean physical or spiritual? It means probably both. And the pasuk says, and I think it's Kohelet, who knows, says Kohelet, about the spirit of the human being that goes up to higher, and the spirit of the animal which goes down to the earth, which dies. And therefore the pasuk says, the soul or the life of the animal is in its dam. Every all creatures, man and animals, have nefesh, have life in their blood. And therefore you can combine the life force which dies to the life force which exists forever, which is our spiritual soul. What do you do with the blood? You can take the blood and put it on the altar to get forgiveness for it. And therefore, and this is the reason now why the Torah says, Israel, and this is why God says now, and now I said to the Jewish people, Kol nefesh mikem kol toch adam, anyone that Kol nefesh mikem lo toch adam, no one shall ingest blood. Why? Because the blood is the soul. One soul can ingest the other soul. It's not just about what he said about you're showing higher leadership over the animal, so therefore one soul can ingest another one. You don't want to become part of you. And I had mercy on the soul of the human being. What am I going to do with the blood of the animals? That the blood of the animals will go on the altar. Their life force will bring forgiveness for you, but you will not consume it. And therefore it says in the Sifrei, be strong, don't eat the blood. Why? It tells me that the other people were involved in consuming blood. Because blood is life force. To explain what happens. Which and therefore And because of all of this, the Ramban, now this last piece of the Ramban, and therefore the fourth answer to the Ramban is that if I consume the blood, I'm consuming the life force of the animal, and it makes me into an animal, or it makes me baser. I don't want to do that. What do I do with the life force of the animal? I sprinkle it on the Mizbeach and bring kapara. The last piece of the Ramban is probably the last 3 or 4 lines, and therefore the Torah also tells us to cover the blood of the wild animals and the birds, because their blood does not go on the mizbeach. None of the only 2 types of birds are brought as sacrifices. They normally are not brought on the altar. They're not shechted. Most of the animals, most of the domesticated behemoth can be used as on the altar. Therefore, their blood is brought for kapara. The chayot are not used on the altar. Most birds are not, and therefore we cover them. The blood that's used on the altar, therefore we don't want to cover it, and we don't make a difference whether it's chulin or whether it's kachim, and this is really the difference between them. So the last piece is saying just connecting in why covering the blood, because the blood is not going to be used on the altar. What does God say? Don't consume the blood because they'll make you into an animal. What do you do with it? You bring it for a sacred purpose, put it on the altar. 4 answers. Do a quick summary. First answer was, because you put the blood on the altar, therefore I can't have the blood because it's sacred. Second answer, the Rambam, is because the idolatrous priests consume blood to try to connect to their demons, I should be different from them. Third reason is because Noah saved the animal kingdom. He was given rights to eat the animals. However, he could not eat their life force. And the fourth answer is, if I eat the life force of the animal, I become like an animal. And therefore God says, I'm protecting you by making sure that you remain pure and spiritual and don't slip down to the animal level. Don't eat the blood. Take the blood instead. What will you do with it? Throw it on the altar and bring forgiveness for you.
Okay. The 2 last one, who said that?
Ramban. The first, third, and fourth. Okay, he offers really 4 reasons, one of which is Rambam. Okay, let's take a 5-minute break.
What is there is a pasuk, Adam or Nefesh?
Yes. Yes.
Where?
Yes.
It
says, well, one of them. It says it many times. It says, "Ki nefesh habasar badam hu."
Right, but where does it say?
It says right here in chapter 17, verse 10, 11. It also says it, "Ki adam hu hanefesh." It says it in pasuk. Where does it say? It says it in multiple places. It says it again and again. Okay, it says it. Let's take the break and I'll find it for you, okay? Let's take the break and I'll find it for Dan while we're on the break.
Yeah.
Okay. Harold, you have a point?
When Hashem blows the Adam Arishon, what does he blow?
It is in Devarim 12:23.
No,
Devarim 12:23. Yud Bez Chav Gimel. Rak Chazak Leviltiach Al Adam Ki Adam Hu Hanefesh V'Lo Techal Hanefesh Im Habasar. Yes, Harold.
with Oifus,
Yes.
there is about 12 minim that are not really. I don't think they're really eaten.
Kedoshim. Kedoshim is chock full of various mitzvot. It's one of the most mitzvot that you have per parsha, and we're going to choose an area in the parsha which has a number of mitzvot together. How does that sound? I mean, we often just choose the number of Rambans that comment on together. So it's in. I just thought we'd take a few minutes to look in the Chumash itself. You actually got the Chumash there. Maybe you guys want to look together when you get to the Ramban. Sure. Okay. So the Chumash itself was on 656. Not in this book, okay? Okay. Let's just look at some psukim before we get into this. Okay, 656. This is what the Chumash is up here. I don't know the page number here. So we're going to go to we'll do verses 17, 18, and 19. Okay, will be enough in your test. 19 verses Yud Zayin, Yud Chet, Yud Tet. 3 psukim back to back. Okay? These are actually relevant psukim between you and people, between us and people, between us and God. So pasuk 17. Lo tisnas lachicha belvavecha. You shall not hate your brother in your heart. What does that mean? I can hate him outside my heart? Well, which is worse, hating someone inside your heart or hating someone outside your heart? Hating someone
in your heart. Yeah.
In your heart. In your heart. Probably were
Could you carry it
19,
around?
Yutet. Because you carry it around, you don't share with it, and the person doesn't know what you really think about him. You know, we're in a high school. One of the nice things about working with teenagers are very black and white.
Yeah.
Teenagers are more black and white than adults, right? Teenagers, you know, you're a teacher. You know, they know that you know that they know that they know that you know who's really on the ball and who's really not on the ball. After a while, you know who the players are and they know who your strengths and weaknesses are. And you can't fool each other very much for very long. So, and that's how. But that's the D10 today, the classroom. However, dealing with adults, it's a little more complex. So, you shall not hate your brother in your heart. You shall reprove your fellow. Okay, that's the translation. And you shall not bear sin upon him. Who wants to tell me what verse 17 means before we look at the Ramban? You shall reprove your neighbor. What does that mean?
Well, if you see him doing something wrong.
So I should reprove my neighbor. Is this a religious issue or is this an interpersonal issue?
Moral issue. Both.
I mean to say that. Do I see him doing something ritually incorrect? Or do I just have a bad feeling about him and I hate him because of what he's doing?
Well, you can't hate him. You have to hate his actions, right?
Okay, but what is he doing? There's no right or wrong answer here. Don't be afraid to make a choice. What do I see? He's doing an Avera. So Dan says, what's he doing? I don't know. He is eating Chazru on Yom Kippur. Okay? So, that's a bunch of them. Right? I'm choosing something that's very obvious. He's eating Chazru on Yom Kippur. So what should you do to him what should you do if you see him eating Chazru on Yom Kippur? You should have a discussion with him. Okay? So you should speak with him. You say, this is not the best thing to do. He's going to say, why not? I don't believe. So what's the answer?
Okay, go ahead.
The answer is he's got his free will to choose what he wants to do. But you're doing your job to try to help a fellow Jew.
Correct.
That rhymes.
Okay, but you also have to be careful how you do this, because sometimes if you're not careful how you do this, you come across as a bull in a china shop, you can actually create you'll create more resistance than what the real idea is, the wisdom of the Almighty.
You've got to use your chesed.
You got to use chesed. You have to know how to reach out, when to reach out, what to say, and if to say it all. Sometimes, right? Sometimes you maybe want to hold back and find when it really pays to have that kind of discussion.
So how would you do it?
How would you do it?
Yeah, how would you do it?
I would go on.
If you see somebody doing what you just.
One way to do it is you would invite him in for a meal on Shabbat and talk about the importance of spirituality, talk about Yom Kippur, and then if the person begins to realize and understand Yom Kippur, he can understand why Yom Kippur is not the appropriate time to eat Chazar. You can't solve all the problems immediately.
Right.
It's not all, I'm saying it's step by step. It is possible, on the other hand, he may not realize something is prohibited in Yom Kippur. Right? Maybe he doesn't know it's chazar. Maybe he didn't look at the ingredients. Maybe he just looked at the ingredients and didn't realize that there's lard. He doesn't know that lard is pig fat. So sometimes these things actually, can be effective. You have to know the players who they are. But what you've really interpreted it to be is that basically you see him doing something that he should not be doing, and therefore you should speak with him. Don't hold it in your heart against him. Try to kind of reach out to him. There's an outreach message here in ways that you have to be careful how to do that. If you read the simple pasuk, though, it looks like you should go over to him and say, "You are such a bad individual. You're going to burn in hell." Right?
Well, some people do that. Right?
Right.
But that's where the Lord comes through. If you said something like that,
I have a bad problem.
enmity within him, then it's like a confusion, right?
You made him.
You doubled down for something. In other words, if he gets angry because you're giving him reproof, then that's worse.
Correct. But
In other words, you do it for safety.
correct. Okay. But what is one more?
I know you're sick.
Okay. One more thing in this pasuk. One more thing in the pasuk before I want to do all three pasukim, then we'll look at the Ramban. Okay. Lo tisalav chet. The end is you shall not carry a sin. You shall not. How does it say? You shall not bear sin because of him. What does that mean? Lo tisalav chet. You gave me one interpretation. If you if you tell him too harsh, he'll double down against you, right? But does it not also mean possibly that if I don't tell him what he's doing wrong, I now have a culpability?
You're responsible.
I'm responsible, right? You know what they say, if you serve drinks in your house and someone is drunk and they're about to get into the car and you don't take the keys away from them, you are responsible as well. You actually can be charged. I'm not sure if in Ontario, surely some of the states in the United States can be done. You have a responsibility to make sure that if you are the person responsible for getting him drunk or her drunk, that you have to make sure that you take all kinds of possible steps to make sure that they don't get out and drive under the influence.
But that also puts you in that position that you better not ever do anything wrong because he'll point it out to you.
Okay, correct. Right.
And then...
Right, it's true, but I'm saying, but once again, the implication is, I want to be very careful because we sometimes forget about this, if I didn't reach out to that individual, I have a certain culpability. So forget about getting drunk. Right? If he's eating chaz on Yom Kippur, aren't I responsible to some extent? And the answer is yes. If I could have stopped him, maybe I have a responsibility. The real issue is, could I have stopped him? Our world is very complex. If I saw a person doing something and I knew he didn't know was wrong, I should go over and speak with him. If I know that he's, so to speak, like really wound up about it, what we call lahachiz, he's really like, a dyed-in-the-wool secularist, and he will only get more angry and do worse things, then it's not going to be my responsibility. But if I have the opportunity to kind of share that, and I don't, I can have a certain sense of culpability.
Two great examples in the Torah. One is Moshe with the two Jews fighting each other.
Right.
And then
he calls one a Russia.
Of course, he calls him a Russia. And the other one is Aharon using white lies to get couples together.
Okay, how's the second one really carry this? Because he brought people.
He didn't have to get it.
Okay, he got involved. He got involved. Excellent. Good. He got it. He got involved to make sure bring people together. If he didn't, because if he did, he would have seen himself as culpable because he had this unique ability to bring people together. Okay, first pasuk. Next pasuk. Let's go to 17, 18, 19, then we'll look at the Ramban. Next thing is, lo tikom v'lo tikor et ne'amecha. You shall not take revenge or bear a grudge against someone else. If you think someone has if you think that someone has done something wrong to you, try to resolve it. If you think it's an issue that can go to adjudication, you should adjudicate it. You should not take things into your own hands. You shall not take revenge. You shall not bear a grudge against someone. And then the second half of the pasuk is the more complex piece. Sounds so easy. You have to love your neighbor as yourself, or love your fellow as yourself, not really only neighbor. How do you love your friend as yourself?
Because we're all children of God, it's like loving God yourself. This is loving your neighbor.
So how do I love God? How do I love God like myself? It doesn't mean like love God by myself.
No way.
I thought loving your neighbor is because we're all children of God and we want to love our neighbor like we love ourselves and it's connected to Hashem. No?
Maybe, I'm not sure. But it's really loving someone as like I love me. Like, I don't know, I love me more than I love anybody else. I gotta be honest with you. I don't hate myself, no, but can I really love you like I love me?
If we're all one, yes.
If we're all one, yes. Okay, so if I have sometimes give up my life for someone else or have to make a certain sacrifice for someone else, possibly. But deep down is really like me. It's very rare, those kind of examples.
But it's the same thing as when Hashem says, be holy because I am holy. Did you ever be as holy as Hashem?
Correct. So we'll have to explain that. So we're not going to get a chance necessarily to get to that today, but we'll maybe get to that on Thursday about being holy, okay?
Yeah. But we also say that...
What is wrong, what is not good for you.
Don't do for him. Hillel said, what you don't want to do for yourself, don't do for him. You should, right. And Rabbi Kiva said, Zeh klal gadol Torah. Is the big klal. So it's a lot more complex to think that I can actually love you like I love me, but we'll see the Ramban will try to address that. It's not that simple. And the third...
If I can save him by me getting killed, I'm not doing that. I'm not allowed to do that. I'm not supposed to.
I'm not supposed to kill me to save you. I shouldn't kill myself to save you.
Like his blood is not than my blood.
What? Right. I shouldn't kill someone else. I shouldn't kill someone else to save someone. What if my death will save? What if my death will save 30 people?
No, but just let's finish with this point.
No.
This point is that we are not the same. I can't love you as the same as I love me.
Okay. This
question you asked.
Yeah.
From one from Terry.
Yes.
He's doing the army only.
Correct.
Is what?
So the army might be a different situation because the army is really about giving your life up and recognizing that. What happens? You're standing at the railroad tracks and you're at the switch. and the train is suddenly out of control and rolling down the tracks, right? And what, of course, if you do nothing, then it'll plow into a group of people who are standing at the bottom of the hill on the tracks. If you flip the switch, it's not going to hit the people; it's going to hit someone else.
You've made that decision. You cannot, because you're taking a life.
Right. So can you actually? That's actually a dilemma. It goes back and forth. Can you do that decision? Because making your decision, you're killing someone. On the other hand, you're saving 30 people. That's the complexity.
You don't know what Hashem has in store for that particular person.
So it's a very difficult dilemma. It's a dilemma that's discussed by secular philosophers. It's the dilemma discussed by halachic philosophers.
I'll share a story with you after.
Okay, let's kind of get the psukim down, then we're going to do the Ramban, because we've got a lot to do today. So that's 1 and 2. We talked about the two psukim 17 and 18. One was really about the challenge of giving tochacha, reproof, and we'll see what Ramban says. The second one is about v'havto echa kamocha. Yeah. Good question. Let's leave it till we get to the pasuk, okay, to the Ramban. Number 19, Yatet, et chukotai tishmoru. This is really unrelated maybe to the ones we just mentioned. You're going to keep my chukim. What are chukim laws you don't understand? Behem techolot tarbiyah kalayim. You shall not make your animal to another species. Sadcholot izrak kalayim. You shall not mix the species in your field. And beged kalayim shatnez layalealecha. You can't combine wool and linen on your begadim themselves. What's the reason for this halacha? Where does this law come from? Why is it? What is really, more importantly, what does a chok really mean? So there's an important Ramban who talks about the definition of what is called a chok, which we think is a law that has no reason. The Ramban will actually say something interesting. I hope I'll get to that last piece today. Okay, let's take a look at our Rambans. So Rambans are 17, 18, and 19. Here's a Ramban here. Here's Ramban in English. You have Ramban in English and Hebrew. You have Ramban in English and Hebrew. And you have Ramban in Hebrew. Okay. Here's Ramban. No, here's Ramban. Okay, Ramban. Okay. We all good? 17?
Yeah.
I got different page numbers. We're good? You good? You have the page number there? You have the page number here? Which page number? 17, 18. It's 1917. I'm sorry. 1917. Right at the bottom of the page. You shall not hate. Was me. Okay, it was me.
Page Guf Yud Tet.
Page what?
Guf Yud Tet.
Guf Yud Tet. Okay? Guf Yud Tet. Okay, Guf Yud Tet. Good. So, Lo titnot zachicha b'vavecha. You shall not hate your brother in your heart. Says the Ramban. Bavur shederach hasonim l'chasod et senatam b'libam. Because people, as a rule, tend to hide with the hatred that they have in their hearts. As it says in the pasuk in Mishlei, b'svatav yinaker sonei. That the person who hates you will be identified. Yinaker will make himself strange bisatav in his statements, that you won't recognize that he is a sonei. So when he says things, you won't recognize he hates you, because he really hates you in his heart. When he speaks, says Mishlei, he disguises his hatred. Right? Speak with a forked tongue, so to speak. Most of what we hate is inside, and we don't really want to confront. So therefore, the Ramban simply says, because that we hate people in our hearts usually, the Torah wrote what normally is really people going to do. As you all pointed out, most hatred is happening inside. That's one thing. The second part of the pasuk was, you will give reproof to your friend. So Ramban says two things. First interpretation, he says mitzvah cheret. What does mitzvah cheret means? This is a second separate mitzvah. The first half of the pasuk, which talks about don't hate your brother and your friend in your heart, is 1 point, period. The second part of the pasuk, to give him reproof, is really unrelated. So the first thing, this Ramban separates the two. We kind of connected them. We said if you hate someone, then maybe you won't want to give them reproof. You're really separating from them. What the opposite of giving reproof is you really love them. If you love someone, you will make sure they don't do something bad. Ramban seems to break the two apart. One is don't hate people, and number two, if you see someone doing something bad, you should give him reproof, or you should try to correct him and speak with him. And you shall have no other sin against you. Because if you did not give him correction, you did not give him reproof, you did not try to speak with him, then you have a certain culpability in what he did as well. And as I added to that, it means that you should, if you have the ability to have an impact. Today we live in a funny world. People do what they want to do. It's a very open society. You got to be careful how you reach out to people. But outreach, or sharing the wisdom of the Almighty with people is surely a very complex thing to do, but it's also a very important thing to do to try to make people aware. Okay? And then we make little gains. Sometimes we have losses. Sometimes 1 step forward, 2 steps backwards. Hopefully more times 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards. And then he quotes the Unclus, who says the same thing. What Targum Unclus says, that you should not receive on his behalf a guilt if you did not. You should not get punished for his sin, because basically you're responsible for him. So that's the second part of the pasuk. And then later in the next pasuk it says that you're going to say v'ahavta kamocha. So first of all, don't hate him. Second of all, if you see him doing something wrong, you should speak to them. And the third thing, you should love him. He says as follows: when you put these two together, you have the person who hates you to another fellow Jew is transgressing a lo taseh, right? And if you reach out to them and love them, you're actually doing a positive commandment. So there's somehow this ties in a little bit. Rav Teichel talks about people who kind of separated themselves in the Hungarian Jews who didn't want to reach out to those people who were the secular pioneers. And remember, he said they're afraid they'll go out there and they'll become influenced. That is a concern. Right? It is a concern if you deal with people who do not share the same ideologies as you. They sometimes can influence you as well. It's a two-edged sword, but you have to be firm enough in your beliefs to know that you can have an impact upon others. Sometimes, by the way, you can have an impact upon others simply by leading by example, even without verbalizing things. If you're honest and straight and direct, right, then you can actually make an impression upon people. And everything is a gain. One of the things that is unique in my community, maybe it's in your community as well, but probably is much different down south in Lawrence and Bathurst, is people, Jews who are Shomer Shabbat and Jews who are not Shomer Shabbat will have very cordial relations. So it is very common to see someone who is in a car saying Shabbat Shalom to someone who's walking to shul, or so forth and so on. That's just the way the community is. The community is not a closed community. Your communities are mostly living in the same kind of groupings, but there are good relationships because I think we can build more by having those relationships rather than trying to cut ourselves off. So at any rate, the Ramban in his initial point says there are really 3 things going. Don't hate, reach out to a person, tell him if he's doing something wrong, and the third thing, love a Jew. Those are 3 things that go. Or if you don't tell him, you're responsible, and therefore you should love a Jew. However, he says another reason. Here's an interesting Ramban. Ramban gives a different interpretation what Ochech Tochech Damitecha is all about, giving reproof. Nachon Be'inayin, says the Ramban, something brand new. Here, listen to this. Ki Ochech Tochech, when it says to give reproof, it doesn't really mean to give reproof. And the Ramban refers to a situation where Avraham creates a pact with Avimelech, and he shares with him about difficulties that they were having. And it goes right back in chapter 21. I'm just going to read you some of the psukim, and you'll see what Hochech Tochech really means. This is right before the Akedah. And this is before the Akedah, at the end of chapter 21. Avimelech and Pichol, his general, come to Avram, and they say to Avram, Elokim imcha asher ta'aseh, God is with you. We'd like you, Hishavani be'Elokim heinam tishkol li l'ni. We're going to swear to me, and to my son, and my grandson, the chesed that God did to you, you should do to us. And Avram says, I'll swear, we'll make a pact. And before he makes the pact, it says, V'ochech Avraham et Avimelech alodot be'amayim asher guzla b'di Avimelech. Avram said to Avimelech, so he says he gave mochacha about the wells that the servants of Avimelech had taken from Avraham. I'll read that pasuk again. Ve'ochiach Avraham et Avimelech aladot beramayim asher gozlav de Avimelech. And Avram hochiach Avimelech, it's translated yet, regarding the wells of water which the servants of Avimelech took. And Avimelech said, I didn't know this happened. You didn't tell me about it, and I just didn't know about it until this today. And I'll look after it. And then when they says that, then they make the pact. So they bring son and bokar, they make the brit, and they set aside kvasim, and they made this covenant between each other. So the word hochiach, what does hochiach mean? So if you look in the translation, they translated here that he reproved. Okay, but it doesn't mean he reproved them. He's trying to make a pact. He's going to give Musar. So they translated here in the article, Abraham disputed with Avimelech.
But you brought in another element. He brought in the wells that had nothing to do with what.
Right. So what is going on here?
Bribing him.
He's
bribing.
He's reprimanding him. So you could read it as reprimanding, and that's usually how we read it.
If you don't do this for my wells, I'm not going to approve what you're asking.
No, he's not doing that.
Well, why are you throwing that in there?
It looks like he's stating a grievance. He says, look, I want you to know, before we signed the deal, I got a problem with you, buddy. You did something bad. You did so. You're now coming to make a deal with me. You're trying to make peace with me, but you're uneven. You kind of tried to steal from me, and now you want to make peace with me. So that's how we normally read it, and that's the same type of hochacha as hocheach tocheach. The Ramban says that's not what it means. Ramban says that Avraham actually was asking. Hochacha in this case, Avraham was really inquiring or following up. It wasn't meant to be antagonistic. He wanted to clarify what happened. Before we make a deal, I need to understand why these wells were taken from me. It's interesting. So Ramban says this is an example where hochacha or hocheach is not lashing out at someone, is trying to get further clarification.
But I just don't understand whether it's almost like seeing the other side of the story.
Well, no, I'm trying to understand. Is there a reason? Do you have any good reason why these wells were taken? I don't know. Somebody showed up one day and they chased us away. They said they're your wells, but I know they're my wells. So before we kind of set the deal up and before we sign on the dotted line to make a peace agreement, can you explain to me what this event was all about?
Yes, I don't know.
So Rabbi Melech says, I didn't know about it. Nobody told me. My servants were acting as rogues. They didn't clear. It was not my will to do so. Now you could say that Rabbi Melech is lying. He's deceptive. He's putting it behind. He's trying to regain the control of the conversation. Ramban accepts that conversation as legitimate and open and honest because they're trying to sign a deal. And Avraham is a wise guy, and Avraham actually swears on this.
But it seems like he's using the opportunity to do something good by going back to something that happened. I don't know the time.
You don't know how far back it went, right?
So it's like your wife who brings up something that happened 10 years ago.
Doesn't have to be your wife.
Yeah, my wife. My wife that brings up something that happened 10 years ago. Oh, you remember? So, but what is that? What one thing has to do with the other is what I'm asking.
Right. So if you feel that when your wife said it, she's being antagonistic, you take offense at it. You say we're trying to solve a problem, and you're raising, let bygones be bygones. What are you raising all the schmutz from back in the air? Everything was still then.
Yeah, but remember, the other party has to be amenable with that issue. A lot of times they're not. Abimelech was.
You could have said, what would you have said?
I'm saying there could be enmity between two parties where one party says, forget about it. He so happened that they did a deal.
Right.
I'm saying there are elements in this universe that creates friction.
Right.
You don't have it here, but sometimes you do.
There are. So the Ramban is not disagreeing with that. The Ramban is trying to explain with the words v'hochiach. The word hocheach tocheach, which we normally mean is give reproof. Lay you out in spades, kind of tell you really bad. Because when you talk about reproof, it's like when the cop pulls you over and says, "What are you doing 60 miles and a 40 mile an hour zone? What do you think you are? Let me see your license." So walk away from the car slowly, ma'am. Okay, don't make any fast move. All these kinds of scare down kind of techniques. That's what you feel reproof is all about. So what the Ramban is trying to say, there's a way to look at hochacha sometimes. It's not really scaring people down, not yelling at people, not putting people and making them feel inferior. And he says the case of Avraham, where it says hocheach Avraham, which is the same term as here, the Ramban understands this as a goodwill trying to understand, Avraham trying to understand what it was. He is really asking for information. Hocheach, which normally means to prove. Avram is saying, try to prove to me, explain to me with veracity what happened. I'm trying to understand. We never resolved it.
I'm just thinking another way. We're talking about hatred in your heart.
Yes.
Now, Abraham has, if it's happened a while ago, he's holding this in his heart.
Right.
And he's coming now to, what was his name?
Abimelech came to him.
No, but see, Abraham has been carrying this with him.
Right.
Now he's coming to Abimelech and saying, "Do you remember those wells that were mine and now you cover them over?" So he's sort of releasing himself of that hatred.
So you're connecting the two and using the hochacha as the words of reproof, which is not the. Well, I think you're right, but I think that's not what the Ramban is saying. Right.
That's what Abraham is saying.
Well, maybe both you guys can get together. You can do it like a lifeline.
Yeah. No, I think it's a tremendous insight. In other words, it sounds like it's giving lesser, right? But that works on the assumption that the person is doing something wrong. And the Rambam is saying, no, let me understand why it is that you're doing it. You're not necessarily a bad person. You may have reasons for doing it, but you don't really know why. Or in this case, you didn't know it was happening. So in other words, find the reason behind what it is.
So you can resolve it.
Right, because if you don't, you're going to keep it in your heart.
I agree with this, and I understand.
Next stage.
I agree with this, and I understand this. But my issue is with why didn't Yaakov love for all these years? Why did
He actually does.
But if he said years.
Yes. So he carried it around. You know what the answer is? Because Yaakov was dealing with mishpacha. Resolving mishpacha issues are much more complicated than dealing with a non-Jew. Okay, that's probably true. That's probably the reason. You know, these Hatfields and McCoys. Okay, that's Yaakov and Lavan. That's part of the reason.
I think.
Wow. But this is, anyways. Are you a Hatfield or a McCoy? Come on, every family has the skeleton in their closet. More the great uncle back in the day. Every family have these stories that goes back 40, 50 years ago that never was resolved.
Yeah. No, I think the opportunity just arose.
Yeah.
He could release himself and say why.
Okay. So you guys are all right. The bottom line is the question is whether Hocheach of Avraham is trying to give reproof. Is he trying to put down Avimelech and Avram trying to get an upper hand, or is he simply trying to really ask for information? By the way, it's important that Avram resolve this, because once he makes a peace treaty with Avimelech,
he gets his world back.
Well, not just that. If he doesn't resolve it now, once they make the peace treaty, then the boundary is set, or things have been resolved. Then he can't go back and say, "But you owe me this." And they'll say, "You should have raised it then." The bottom line is, here's what's the key of keys. Ramban is saying that sometimes giving hochacha, sometimes the word hochiach is not about kind of putting someone down. It's about trying to seek further, resolve the issue by seeking further information. Which means in this case, it's not about if you see someone doing something wrong, that you go down and say, "How could you eat chazu on Yom Kippur during the Elah when the ark is open?" Okay, the answer is, maybe you forgot it's Yom Kippur. Maybe you forgot it's the Chazar is Aser. I forget there's a story with Rav Levi Yisrael Mibeditchev, or maybe Rabbi Yisrael Salanta, one of the two, sees someone breaking Shabbos, and he says, smoking on Shabbos, he says, maybe you forgot it's Shabbos. No, I know it's Shabbos. Maybe you forgot the smoking. He says, I know smoking is Aser, and I know it's this. And so he says, look, God, your children can't tell a lie. They only want to tell the truth. They are seekers of truth, okay? So the answer is yes. So that's what the Ramban says. The Ramban says that from this point you see that trying to give reproof is not only about yelling, it's about trying to ascertain. You see someone doing something wrong, you try to understand what it is. Now the truth is most people do not do things for theological bases. Most people who probably break the laws do not understand the wisdom of the Almighty because they've never been taught, they've never been trained, they grew up in a society where everybody else does it, and they just don't really believe that there's validity because nobody else believes there's validity. They haven't really sat down and studied all the texts. There are some people who have studied the text, who are willfully, and they say, I've studied it, I don't believe, I've read everything. Most people are just not that intellectual, and most people don't really sit down and become theologians. So they say, you know what that was, and this is a new world, things have changed, it's not what it used to be. But if you sit down and explain it to them, you have an opportunity, a reasonable opportunity, not immediately, to kind of build bridges and share some of the wisdom of the Almighty. That's what the Ramban is trying to say. All I'm trying to show you is that the Ramban is actually seeing in this pasuk of Ocheach Tocheach, which we often read as fire and brimstone sermons, as the exact opposite. So let's just read the Ramban. So therefore, if he says, Vocheach ad Avram ad Avimelech, Vayomer Katuv, and it says, and this is not even against God. So the Ramban now makes an application. If you see someone did something bad to you, this Ramban is stretching. He's saying this is not only if you see someone eating chazu on Yom Kippur, right? But you see someone did something that you really feel bad, he was insulted you. What's the best way to try to deal with it? Try to find out why the person did it. You think the person slammed the door in your face. He didn't see you. Why'd you slam the door in my face? I didn't even know you were there. That's a simple example. Right? Why did you pass me over for a promotion? Well, because I had you in mind for something else, or I think that you need to improve here. Not because I hate you, not because I'm playing favoritism.
We're getting into another subject, and that's the subject of human nature. kosher.
Correct.
That Ramban, I don't know if he fills it in or not, but a person has to take off their covers of ego,
Yes.
like Avraham, to get there.
Correct.
That's the issue.
Yes. But you also have to try to know how to be a diplomatic person to kind of raise these issues to be able to probe them. Otherwise, you come across too strong. Right? Interpersonal relations are sometimes more complex than dealing with God. Right? Rabbis will tell you it is easier to say that the meat is treif than to go to two people and say, Chaim, you owe $100 to Yaakov. Right? Because there's always going to be because the person who lost it not just lost it, he lost it to someone else. So the Ramban says, let's just read the Ramban and we'll reflect a little more. Now it says, don't hate your brother or your friend because he did something that you didn't like. Give him tochacha. What does that mean? Find out, informative. Why'd you do this to me? Don't have more sin by not having that discussion, because if you don't have that discussion, what's going to happen? You're going to hate him. In other words, don't hate your brother in your heart. If you see something that you think is done against you, try to open the lines of communication. So Ramban is actually taking it away from even to man to God, it's really man to man. And if you don't do that, you'll be sinning, and you'll be responsible because you could have. When you speak with him, when you give him reproof, which means not reproof, when you open the conversation to find out why, he will explain it. Maybe he does not have a good explanation. Maybe he realized he made a mistake. Or maybe that person who you thought did something wrong to you, maybe he will understand and agree that he did something wrong, and he'll try to seek your forgiveness. So that's the connection of the pieces of the pasuk according to the Ramban, and that's why it says afterwards, "V'achar ken yasir shlo tinkom mimenu lo tikom." That's why the next pasuk says, "Don't hold a grudge, don't take revenge." Don't take revenge against your neighbor. That's clearly an inter-neighbor. But all of this deals with one thing. Maybe you won't hate your friend, but you never really resolved it. You never opened the discussion. So you say, okay, I'm going to take the hate out of my heart, but I have a grudge against him. Right? I want to take revenge against him. That's going to get rid of my hate. So therefore, first thing is don't hate him. Open up the communication, and then you'll be able to love that person. So they all go together. So the Ramban is really giving a brand new shot. He's actually taking it away from God, sins, ritual sins. He's relating it to interpersonal sins, which is in line with what a lot of the Psukim are in Parshat Kedoshim. So he's giving us a responsibility that if we feel that there's a break between ourselves and someone else, we should try to find an opportunity to resolve it. Very, very delicate. But you should just try to keep the grudge and put it in the back pocket and keep it all for all those years. And that's, of course, that's an ideal. It's more complex to try to put onto the ground, into the facts on the ground. So we're not up to. That's why we have to. Kamocha is a klal gadol. Right, we're leading to that. Good. Okay. So that's the first pasuk. You're good? We're fine? We're all going to do that. We're going to go out of here and resolve all the problems? Yes? I don't know. I don't know. In my family, we talk about, but we don't talk about my parents have passed away. We used to talk about a certain uncle who forced himself to be at the head table of my parents' wedding. Okay? And no, I'm sorry. I got the story wrong. I forgot the story. The story was my uncle was put at the head table, and he insisted if he was at the head table, his children should be at the head table with him. Okay. And that's a story that goes back, my parents have now passed away. My parents were married in 1950, I think, and this went on as long as I was a kid, and I remember hearing about this, and we know who the descendants were. This was Hatfields and McCoys, so to speak. So those things happen in every family, and don't tell me it's not in your family too, because people didn't reach out and they kept that grudge. Now, I understand. Like you can imagine, you spend a lot of preparation preparing a wedding, and someone comes along and says, I'll even tell you the quote. He said, "Wo ich sitzen meine Kinder." Where I sit, my kids sit with me. And this, of course, made a big explosion at the wedding. So you all have those stories. But the answer is, I think, what the answer was? My grandfather was a peace lover, and he says, okay, you want your kids to sit there, we'll pull up chairs, or sit at the head table, right? But they made peace, but they never made peace. The story always came up. I never heard of my grandfather. He was long gone. I heard from my parents. My mother of Flangayon used to tell it over, and I tell the story to my kids just to keep it alive. They don't even know who these people are. They have no idea. They could meet these people on the street. There's a different end of the family that's really far away. But just to understand, of course, you give the mashal and explain the implication. It doesn't always have to be like that. Okay, so that's the first pasuk, right? How we doing? Good. Next pasuk. Second pasuk, we said one was about lo tisnas tachicha b'vavecha and giving him the truth. The next pasuk talked about not to have a grudge and not to have revenge, and v'yahavta l'reacha kamocha. And I told you that's a very hard thing to do. So here's the Ramban is going to take his take on how you do v'yahavta l'reacha kamocha. Very complex. It's a short paragraph, but you will have to go through it slowly. It's continuing right where we are. So they're all one after the other. That's the beauty of this piece. You don't have to flip pages. V'tam v'yahavta l'reacha kamocha. And the reason it says afterwards v'yahavta l'reacha kamocha. And how is it really? What the Ramban is really asking an understood question: how is it possible that a person can love his fellow friend the way he loves himself? I love myself more than I love everybody else. I do. I love my wife. I love my wife almost like myself. I do love my wife like myself. Please take it off the table. Okay?
That's re'echa. That's not
ishto. That's ishto kegufo. That's right. That's ishto kegufo. The Talmud says that if your wife is short, bend down and listen to her. Give her your ear. Okay. So that's a unit. That's not even fair. It's not correct. I love my wife like myself. But when it talks to other people,
it's different.
Right. The spouse is different. Even the rest of the mishpacha. Correct. But so the Ramban, the first word the Ramban says is haflaga. Haflaga means exaggeration. The Ramban says when the Torah says he's not going to end with
everybody's
that.
Got that story.
It's a terminology that's an exaggerated terminology. Love your neighbor as yourself. Why? It's not possible, it's really not humanly possible by nature that a person should love someone the way he loves himself. I love myself. I love everybody a lot, but I love myself a little more. No matter how close they get, I still love myself a little bit more. You're looking at me, you don't believe it.
No, I'm listening.
Okay? It's just physically
Except
not...
children.
Except children. So we're leaving, as Harold said, we're going to leave mishpacha out of this. But it's not possible that a person will love someone more... or I won't say it's not possible, it's rare. It's rare that a person will love someone else more than himself. Now the Ramban has to explain what the pasuk means, because the pasuk seems to say that the two are equal. So let's stay with this. The Ode, Shekfar Bore Rabbi Kiva, and Rabbi Kiva already came and said, this is Masechet Baba Mitzia, it's about what happens. This is where if you're stuck with one jug of water, you're stuck with one jug of water in the desert, and it's only enough for the jug to sustain either me or you. And it's my jug. What do I do? Now, if it's a shared jug, we share it, but it's my jug. So the answer says, Rabbi Kiva, Chayecha kodmim l'chayech haverecha. Your life comes before the life of your friend. It's a lot of discussion, what if it's not my jug, but it's assuming it's my canteen. And I know that from here till the next civilization and the next gas station, the next oasis is going to be, I can only get through with one canteen. So my life comes first. It's a very difficult decision. This is lifeboat ethics. These are dilemmas that are basic on life and death dilemmas. However, Rabbi Kiva says that I am responsible. I'm surprised
because Sherry, maybe another emunah, maybe you have.
So the answer is the situation is such that assuming all the laws of nature stay what they are, I cannot reach the next oasis unless I keep all the water myself. I know the terrain. It's not like I'm lost. Like, you're saying maybe it's possible that over the next hill there's a 7-Eleven. Okay, there's a big truck stop that I don't know about. No, it means I know exactly where I am, and I know this desert, and somehow my camel broke down, and I don't have the CAA. Okay, the camel broke down, and it's going to take me so many footsteps or so much hours to walk until I get to the oasis, which I know. And if I don't have the water, the sun is coming up in an hour, and I will be dehydrated. I won't make it. If I share it, if I keep it, then I will make it. So the case is fairly, very distinct. So says Rabbi Kiva, you see clearly that I'm not equal. It's not if I loved you like myself, right, then we should share the canteen. That's what you all expected to be happening. And then we both die. We both would die. Or maybe I should give you the canteen and I should die. Because if I keep it, then I surely haven't done v'yahavta l'reacha kamocha. If I give it to you, I've loved you as much as myself, in fact more, and you survive. So the answer is no, I'm still a little better. So as much as I try to raise my love for you up to the highest levels, I'm still a couple of drops higher, a couple of inches higher on that scale. So what does this pasuk mean? Now, obviously the dilemma that the Ramban has to deal with, if it's not possible, if it's not exactly equal, what does this really mean?
So it has nothing to do with love. It's got to do with survival.
That's survival.
If I'm going to, is it me or you that's going to survive?
Right, so that you're right, that's an extreme case.
I love you or not.
So that's an extreme case, correct. But the Ramban is saying, even without mentioning extreme cases, human nature is such that in most cases, the vast majority of cases, as much as I love other people, as much as I'm altruistic for other people, I still want myself to be a little better. Okay, it's very rare. In other words, if there's one opportunity for an advancement in the company, I want to get that advancement. Right? I don't want to be passed over, and you should get it. So even though I love you and I think you're a great colleague and you have great leadership potential, I think I'm a little better. I think it's a job that I really want, and therefore I'm going to push for it myself, not push for you. Okay, that's just the reality. So what does it mean? So if that's the case, so what's this all about? The Torah can't be telling me stuff that's not right. Ella, here's what it says the Ramban. And this is the reality. It means that you should try to love your friend in all the different facets of love and try to give him as much as you can. The same way that you love yourself with everything b'chol hatov. In other words, everything that you want for yourself, you should try to want for your friend. If you don't want it for yourself, you should not want to try to want it for your friend. So therefore, in other words, it's true I really want it for myself more, but the same way that I shouldn't just love you because I think you're a great guy. I love you, but if I really love you, I want to help you. Same way I want to help myself. So in other words, it doesn't mean exactly equal. Right? It's about trying to offer you things that are similar to what I want. L'reacha, not esreacha. Correct. And that's what the Ramban says. And so in other words, it doesn't mean that I have to, in other words, if I like money, I want to try to make sure that you have money. So I try to look out for you, that you have enough. If I like ice cream, when I go to get a scoop, try to get a scoop for you. Now, I don't get a scoop for me and say, too bad, I like you only because I like you we're going for a walk in the afternoon, but I don't like you for you should have ice cream. Everything that is important for me, I want you to have as well. Whatever I want to do, that I want to be successful, I want you to be successful. It's not exactly the same way, but it means the same kinds of acts, the same kind of values, the same kinds of ideas. And therefore, says the Rambam, doesn't say you will love to your friend, but it means to do to your friend. In the same way that it says, you're going to love to the stranger, which means your mind should always be thinking about your friend as well as you, your buddy as well as you. So in other words, the two loves should be the same as much as possible. Ki palmim rabim, says the Ramban, but sometimes it's not like that. Palmim rabim she'Yehovah damed ve'ehu b'dvarim yiduim. Sometimes a person has very specific relationships with people on specific issues. Leitivo ba'oshev v'lo b'chachma. I have a financial relationship with a person, so I want them to be successful, but I don't want them to be too smart. I don't want them to be successful in wisdom. No, the same way that I should be successful in everything that I want you to be successful in everything that you want. So if wisdom is important, I want you to be successful in wisdom. Then we're not the same. So I can't say that I like fishing, I want you to be successful in fishing, but I want you to be successful in everything that you want to be for yourself. Not the same like me, but the same way that I struggle for myself, I want you to be able to struggle and be successful for yourself. So they're not equal, they're just similar ways in terms of whatever is important for you. In other words, if I like you in everything, I want you to have all the important things in life. What's important in life? Osher, riches, nechasim, possessions, kavod, honor. Honor is important. Dad, wisdom, chachma, knowledge and wisdom. Not to be equal to you. I don't want us to both come out with Einsteins. I want to be like I want to be better than you, but I want you to have the same kind of opportunities to grow in those kinds of things. So whatever is important for you, I want you to be successful. I want me to be more successful overall, because I like myself more, but I want you to do everything you want to do in your life. That God should give you everything that you really want for good. HaKadosh Baruch Hu yitain kol mish'alot libchem litovah. And therefore says the pasuk, "V'lachen aval yechafes libo lam shehu yotem mimeh b'chol tova." Yitzaveh katuv shlo tiyeh pchitat hakina hazot libo. You shouldn't have this only in your heart, but rather aval yehov birvot tova lechaver kasher adam oseh lenafsho. You should try to love your friend and do whatever kinds of good you can do for him, the same way that you would do for yourself. You shouldn't put certain boundaries and limits on that love. And therefore, and the example he gives is about David and Yonatan. Yonatan was the son of Shmuel. Saul, thank you. We just passed the Shabbat. And it says, Ke'avat nafsho ahivo. Why? That he loved David with a love of his soul, right? Ke'avat nafsho ahivo, that Yonatan loved David. Why? Because Yonatan took away the kinah, the jealousy from his heart, that he knew that David would be the next king and he would not get to inherit the leadership of his father. Correct. And he says, and Yonatan says to David, you will be the king over Israel, and I'll be to you a secondary, I'll be to you the assistant, the Mishneh, the Sheni. So once again, the idea is that you want whatever you want, you should be most successful. So, in other words, here's how I understand the Ramban. Whatever you want, God should give you to be the most successful. I want to be the most successful person I can be. I want you to be the most successful person you can be. But the bottom line, if we're running the race, I want to win the race. But I want you to reach your potential. It's not really contradictory. So it's a way of trying to just keeping everybody in mind. Right, because Yonatan knew that the war was that David would be the king. Right. So he knew that he did not have the potential to be the king. So he loved David, that David would be king. You see at the very least that they're not the same. But this is the example. They're very different. Yonatan and David were different individuals. One was royal lineage, one was not. One was David, one was Yonatan. And at the same time, Yonatan loved him equal and would do anything for him, but they still, each one was a little bit different.
So it's not possible to love your neighbor as much as you love yourself. That's what we're saying.
No, I want to love you not as much as I love myself. I love my neighbor the same way that I want him to do as much as I want to do for myself.
But you cannot love your neighbor as much as you love yourself.
Correct. Right. The bottom line, if we're both running the race, I want to win. I want to edge you out.
That's the first time I've heard that interpretation.
Okay, that's right. That's Ramban. I still want to win the race, unless maybe I'm not a runner. I want to win my race.
Is he saying basically that human nature cannot love?
He says correct. That's what he's saying. He's saying it's not possible in the good majority of cases that you could be that altruistic that you want to throw yourself away and someone should beat you out. Maybe not.
Look in the case of Jonathan, he wisely realized that if he was in a position of kingship, he wouldn't be doing as good a job as David, and he would put himself in a position of discomfort.
Let me rephrase it. I don't love that I want to be you, and I don't want to love you that you should be me.
No, I understand, but I'm also thinking, aren't we here to break our nature?
To break our nature? No, we're here to live up to the potential of our nature.
I thought we're all supposed to break our nature. Wasn't Esau supposed to break his nature?
Everybody has good in him to reach the ultimate good that a person can become. Esau was the kibbud avaim. So we all have a nature. We all have things that can twist one way or the other. I've got to reach my potential. My potential is different than your potential. Your potential is different than his potential. What you can be the best person you are. Now we have people who miss that opportunity their entire life, and they never know they missed it.
What about the story with Joseph and his brothers? They hated him so much.
That's a case of opportunity that was missed. Right. But if you choose the wrong things to develop, you will not develop your potential either. If I wanted to decide now, at my age or whatever, I want to become an Olympic skier, right? It's probably not the right decision. But you know what? If I really work hard, I probably can become a better skier, especially since I haven't skied all that well. Okay, but I'm never going to become as good as the Olympic skiers. Why not? I haven't practiced as much. My bones are older. My joints are older. It's too late. Right. So we're even too late. The answer is that the opportunities that present themselves now. At this point, I can reach a certain potential. I haven't reached my potential as a skier. That's for sure.
Steroids.
Even though I took all the steroids, I took them, drank them like milk. They wouldn't help me at this point.
I'm going back, Moshe, to human nature and loving your neighbor. And if a human being, if a Jew is born angry, really angry, what is the best they could be? Shouldn't they be growing up trying to break their nature, not to be angry in this world?
Use your anger for positive things.
But they're supposed to break their nature as the nature of anger.
Right. So being meek and overly humble may not be the best thing either. Suppressing your anger. Anger can be used in positive ways, but anger that's out of control is a destructive nature. So in other words, it's not that anger is completely out of line. There's times to show anger, but you have to put in. The problem with anger is you lose control of it. You can lose control very easily. It's an emotion that kind of flows through your whole body. It's like it's a response. You get flushed. There are physical responses that go with it, and you can't control those. So the answer is, I'm going to disagree with you that you are supposed to break your nature. You're supposed to control your nature, develop your nature, mold your nature. You can't break it. You can mold it. You can adapt it. You can develop it. But you can't become something you're not. The world is made of different people. Every person is very different and unique. And the nature of two people can't be the same. And if I was created in a certain way with a certain genetic makeup and a certain emotional makeup, I can't change the emotional makeup. I can work on it. It's like going to physio, right? You can't fix a broken muscle. You can learn to work with it. You can develop the other muscles and strengthen them so that you can walk normally or restore your previous strengths. But it's not by changing. I can't just switch out a muscle and put in another muscle. Like probably today I could. Most of us can't. So that's really about just trying to work with it, develop the potential. If I have a sprained muscle or I have a broken muscle or I have a slipped disc or whatever it is, I can never really repair it. I can learn to work with it and develop its potential. So I believe that's what the Ramban is saying. So Ramban is saying, because we're so much different, so I can't really be the same as you. And you know what? I can't even want to say that. Do you go fishing? Oh, I don't know. That's not a good example. Let's say you went fishing. I don't go fishing. Let's say who goes fishing? Any fishers? You go fishing. So I'll never. In other words, I don't want. He would never say, Yeres, I want you to be as good a fisherman as I want to be. Because I probably don't have the patience for fishing. It's probably not something I really would do well. I don't know. I'd probably bring a book and forget that when the fish are biting or something. But in other words, I want you to do what you really want to do. The same way that I love fishing and I would live to fish, I want you to live for what you can do and be successful in. So that's really. So it can never be exactly equal. It has to be that I love you as you are to develop who you can be. That's what I think the Ramban is saying. And I think that, by the way, is a working definition of a truthful reality definition of what V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha is. What's our problem is we don't think about other people. We're only thinking about ourselves. It's not that we don't think about people to be equal to us. We don't think about people at all. We're really me. You ever see where people drive on the highway? Where they, crazy drivers? They're only thinking about themselves. They're just trying to get ahead of everybody else. Now I know they think they're more important. But they're not respecting the rules of the road. The rules of the road are meant that we all get there. And there's a fast lane, there's a slow lane, there's a medium lane. So I think that's it. Okay, how much time? We're at 11 o'clock? So maybe we're going to leave the Kalayim part for next time. The Kalayim is about mixing animals. Why can you not mix animals together? Basically, the Almighty tells us, just give you the trailer for next time. The Almighty tells us, the God created the world in such a way, and therefore you cannot intermix species, because if God wanted to intermix species, He would have mixed them. Naturally speaking, there are sometimes, by the way, there are a few examples where animals will interbreed even by themselves, such as horses and donkeys will interbreed. But a mule that's created, of course, is a sterile creature. So you see, even when they do interbreed, the mix is such that it doesn't have the chromosomes don't line up, that it can't really, either it can't create something, or then the actual mix itself will become sterile and can't have another generation. But we'll leave that for next time, and we'll pick up and we'll have also some Nesivos Shalom on Thursday. But
I'm going to link that.
I think he's just saying it's pretty much separate. So he keeps that one separate. Oh, wow. Okay, good idea. Mention it again on Thursday. Okay, let's take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to do something from Rabbi Melamed. What is something about Yom Ha'atzmaut?
You mentioned fishing, and you don't have the patience.
Away from the wicked who walk in darkness, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to try something. So Abraham, I recall reading that his best friends were not monotheists.
Correct.
Okay. So they weren't tzaddiks, as we're talking about here.
Yes.
We're supposed to judge every single Jew favorably.
Correct.
So how do we define?
Who's
I look at Abraham and his buddies.
Right.
How do we define who's wicked?
So I've said this multiple times. I don't think most people out there who are not committed are wicked. I think they're ignorant.
But what does this mean? Who do I associate with? How do I know who they are?
So I'll tell you who you associate with. Can I go back to my driving example? If someone accumulates tickets for being a scofflaw, not paying his parking tickets, if someone kind of speeds and gets a ticket, and it doesn't mean that that's a driver I shouldn't associate with. On the other hand, if I see someone who's doing drag racing, maybe that's not the kind of person that wants to set an example for me for how I should drive on the road. That's a complete disregard. What are the two differences? Both of them are breaking the law. One is doing so willfully. I'd say the drag racer who endangers other people and doesn't really care is considered more wicked than the person who simply just, wasn't watching his speedometer and he kind of went to 140 clicks and got yanked over.
So you're talking about it's got to be
you really got to think hard and be the person who intends to really be willful and destructive and doesn't believe, and you know what it is. And I think that's less and less common today. I think most people who we face the dangers of secularization. People believe that secular life is really the key value. To make them aware of that is really the challenge we have. So I think there's not every person who is not keeping the mitzvot is a wicked person. Okay. So let's come to talk about what we're going to do today. So I want to do... Yes. Okay.
I was at the Shoah in Ottawa, at the memorial, the Holocaust memorial. Rabbi Bulka was giving the Devar Torah.
I'm a Chutin.
Anyways, he was saying that there weren't only 6 million Jews that perished, but there were 6 million Kedoshim. And he tied that in with the Parsha. It was just an absolutely wonderful speech. So he's an excellent speaker.
I think so. I agree. Okay. Okay. The kids are just coming in. They were davening over in the open. That's what the hubbub is all about. They're not just coming to school. So this will kind of die down in about 2 minutes. In other words, because today's Yom Ha'atzmaut, they all daven together in the Yochanan, the girls' school, and now they're busing back. They're just coming off the bus full of energy. So we'll tolerate it and pretend we don't hear it. Because we want to be a haftal arecha kamocha, love them as we love ourselves. You gotta love kids. You gotta love kids.
They can't take our coffee.
You're there to guard it. I'm not worried about these kids. It's the university kids that want the coffee. I feel bad saying no to them, but it's not fair to you. Okay, anyways, here we go. So I have 2 things I want to do with you today in the Chumash. One is I want to do, and at least, Okay, at least one is I want to do the mitzvah about kilayim. We talked about mixing different species and the prohibition for it, and then I wanted to do a piece from the Nesivos Shalom about Shabbos, okay, which is really a good piece. I want to make sure I get to that. So we had actually seen the pasuk. Okay, let's take the Chumash for a minute before we look at the Ramban. Okay, the Chumash is chapter 19, verse 18 or 19, I can't recall now. Page in the Chumash, it's page 662. 662, the top verse. Okay? And Kedoshim really has a whole bunch of mitzvot. In fact, we could spend, weeks and months in doing Kedoshim because it's a listing really of one mitzvah after another. And in fact, many of the mitzvot actually at the beginning especially seem to dovetail with the 10 Commandments. So they're almost like a repetitiveness of the 10 Commandments. But the one we're going to focus on today, and I think we read the pasuk about, is about not to interbreed, not to mate animals with different species. As chukasai tishmoru, you're going to observe my decrees. Behem techal lo tarbiya kalayim, you're not going to mate your animal with another type of animal. So you're not going to mate a horse and a donkey, or you're not going to mate give me another example. Intermating animals. A lion and a tiger. Right? There's a liger, and then there's a mix between a lion and a tiger, and then there's a mix between a tiger and a lion. Depends. One's a male, one's male female, one's male female male. So that has been done. It has been done in captivity, where they've actually they've injected the semen into the female. These animals normally do not mate together, even in captivity. So they have created this mixed species. So you should not do that. And by the way, the liger is like it's a big tiger. It's like.
So are you allowed to do it to dogs? Are you allowed to?
No, dogs are the same species.
So a lion and a tiger is not.
Lions and tigers are not. Okay, they're considered. They don't normally mate together. Dogs do mate together. Cats, different types of cats do mate together. Right? Different types of humans mate together. Okay, different races of people can mate together. That's a natural mating process. But in other words, some species are so diverse that they don't. So even though the lion and tiger are big cats, they both seem to be very different. So therefore, you can ensure that something like a horse and a donkey is an intermating, even if the animal mates on their own. Sometimes they do in the wild, but very rarely. So, you shall not plant your fields with mixed species together. You can't plant one seed on top of the other. And beged kalayim shatnes lo, you can't wear a garment made of shatnes. Okay, so what's the reason for this? So how does the pasuk begin? What's the first 3 words of the pasuk? Before behem techa. That's the 4th word. What's the first 3 words? As chukasai tishmoru. So what's it telling us? What does the Torah tell us is the reason for the law? What's a chok? What's the reason for a law for chukim? We don't know. There is no reason. Now I said 2 things. There is no reason, or we don't know the reason. Which one is it? We don't know the reason. Why must I say that we don't know the reason? Because it would be hard. There must be a reason. It would be hard for us to accept theologically that the Almighty simply made a random rule that has no reason. There's the wisdom of the Almighty set the world. We call this nature. We talk about nature. The scientists talk about evolution, that these were random changes of some kind of species that adapted, and it got lucky because the environment changed and that species survived and the others died out. But that's all really about chance. Right. It's possible to talk about the evolution and changing of different species, but it's very difficult to say it simply just happened randomly without any thought being put into it. So if HaKadosh Baruch Hu made certain things, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu made certain creatures, we should not kind of reject with that, because there was a reason why each creature was built for a specific time.
Even if there is no reason.
I'm sorry? Good question. Hold on to the question. Excellent question. I was waiting for someone to ask that. Good. Next.
Even if there is no reason, there is still an ultimate reason that Hashem could have had in mind to teach us submission to Him, even though we can't fathom what the cause is, the reason is.
Right, but even though we can't fathom what the reason is, means there is a reason.
Right, and the reason could be just that there is no reason.
And you have to have faith in the Hashem.
But it has to be a reason why there's no reason.
That to train you to submit to Hashem doesn't matter what.
But that's a reason.
That's the reason. That's what I'm saying. There is an ultimate reason.
Why do we submit? We have to submit for ourselves.
Because Hashem says so.
Everything's for the human being.
And we train. We train ourselves to.
So what Dan is suggesting is that God would intentionally put together laws that have no reasons, that we would be trained to do things without reason, simply submit to the Almighty. It's could be, but I don't believe it would be. Okay, it's hard to imagine that God would simply want us to do stuff that's random, that has no purpose, no meaning, as if to say we're just doing things because we're doing things. I believe that everything that the Almighty gave to us has got a way to make a human being better. I'm not doing the mitzvah because I'm going to go to Olam Haba and sit in some kind of golden chair. I do the mitzvah because it makes a self-improvement.
This is the ultimate improvement that I can work on myself.
To do something
without the apparent reason.
Okay, so maybe if I don't know the reason, that tells me I have to do it. But to say that the Almighty built something with no reason at all, it simply was, he had nothing to do.
I didn't say that. I just raised it as a theoretical possibility.
I understand. No, I'm just saying, your theoretical possibility I want just to reflect upon. I think it's an ingenious response. It's a creative response, but I don't believe it's correct.
The thing is, it has to revolve.
Right. Or it has to revolve around God who created things for human beings.
It really is about us.
Right, I agree.
It's not about Hashem. It's all about us.
Yep. Okay, so let's go take a look at Ramban. Here is the Ramban. Who needs Ramban? There's Ramban's here. There's an English one here. We got an English one here. You want a Hebrew one? You want a Hebrew one? I'll look on with the English one. Here's an English one. You hear Hebrew English 1919, I think. Let's put together. You have Ramban. You don't have. You have a Chumrah. You don't have Ramban. Okay, you look together? Okay. Let me see if I find it for you. 1919.
You have an extra there?
Excellent. Just one more page and we're good. Yes.
When we say that Adam was with the animals,
that's my midbar.
Is it do we know for sure that he was not intimate with animals? Because he knew.
Maybe he was.
Well, what's the fun of that?
So the Medrash, one Medrash says he tried to mate with all the animals and realized that they were not for him. And that's Adam. He's being created, first time in the world. It's not a mitzvah. Adam does not have mitzvot like we know them.
But Adam's a human being, correct?
Yes, he is. But Adam also didn't eat flesh like we eat meat. He can only eat plants. Did Adam make brachas? I don't know. Did he say the bracha of the Muslim? Did he daven 3 times a day? So his realities or his actually behavior patterns are not necessarily going to be the marker patterns for us necessarily. So even if this was that the Almighty brought every animal to Adam to identify or to see if there could be a mate, right? Then God realized there is no mate, or Adam realized not a mate, and that's why God makes Eve. That's one medrash. Okay, let's come to here. It's 1919. It's a long piece. We're not going to do all of it. Et chukotai tishmoru. Everybody got 1919? You're here somewhere, right? Et chukotai tishmoru. You found it? Yes. It's 19, verse 19. I think I put a marker there somewhere. Yes. Where's 19? 19? There you go. Okay, good. So at Chukotai Dishmo says the Ramban, the Elohein, and these are the mitzvot that are identified here as Chukotai, Be'em Techolot Tabir Kalayim. So the Ramban simply says that the opening stitch about Chukim is going to talk about Kalayim itself, as if to say there's no reason. What are Chukim? Elu Gzerot Melech, these are the rules of the king, these are the decrees of the king, She'ein Tam L'Davar. Rashi says that have no purpose, no reason for them, according to Rashi. In other words, that the listing here of these items don't really seem to have a real logical and understandable reason. And that's what a chok is. Chok means there is no reason. However, the Ramban says that Rashi is not being very careful in the way he wants to define a chok, because v'lo iskiru rabotenu she'atam ne'elam v'yishiyu zeitzarav v'motalam ashivin lalihem el b'levishat shanez v'lo b'lai kalai kerem. The rabbis didn't really mention. They didn't mention this idea. They didn't say that the reason is held back and that people raise questions about that make no sense. From these terms of not mixing animals, because I have a reason for it, because the reason I'm going to present it to you for it, it looks more that they discussed it only about shatnez, perhaps, is also there's more of a reason, more not understanding the reason. So in other words, the Ramban simply is just pointing out that even though the pasuk, according to Rashi, looks like it's giving you rules, these are rules that have no reason, and then lists not intermingling animals, the Ramban says that's not really how the rabbis understood not intermingling animals. There is a reason for it. It may be only the last item in the pasuk about not wearing wool and linen together is more of an irrational kind of mitzvah. That's just the opening piece. V'yein hakavana bazeh, and this is the key line about what exactly chukim are. V'yein hakavana bazeh shetiyeh gzerat melech malchem lachem b'shum makom v'lo tam. It doesn't mean that God made rules in any case, in any place, without a reason whatsoever. It doesn't mean that anything is random. Even the mitzvot that we call chukim, even the mitzvot that the nations say to us, you're doing nonsense. You're doing laws that make no sense. Ki imras elokat rufa, because the words of God are pure, are purified. Everything that God did has got a purpose for it. God chooses His words. It's a pasuk from Mishlei, from the book of Proverbs, where King Solomon says the words of God are tzrufa, are refined. The same way that when you write a speech, unless you speak extemporaneously, you plan every word. When there is a press release from the government, they should think out every word before they release it. What we have is we have a president of the United States who often shoots out tweets without thinking carefully. That's the unusual part. That's what stands out in this fellow's leadership. But that's just the way he is, because everybody's expecting that the words of the president will be well thought and measured, and he doesn't. Because you expect it, but the words of the Almighty surely are measured. However, what is a chuk? These are decrees of the king which he decides for his kingdom without revealing the purpose to the people. So the actual ultimate goal or the reason for the rules are not really understood by the peasants, by the people, by the citizenry, except there is a reason. And the people don't really benefit from them. And they actually mutter behind his back against it. And what do? They accept it only because they are in awe and in fear of the king. And that's what it means. So the Ramban is trying to be very careful. It says not that there is no reason, there is a reason. Except the Almighty did not reveal to us the reason. The God has His reasons for everything. We don't see that. In the same way we don't see things that occur in life, sometimes why they are. So too the mitzvot, we don't understand the reason for every mitzvot. Some mitzvot are very clear, are very, very logical. Some mitzvot are less logical. Some mitzvot are illogical. But there is a logic that's just not simply revealed to us. If you took a class in calculus, and you never studied calculus or geometry, and you sat in the back of the classroom, you would not understand what's going on when all the charts go on the board. But there is a logic to it. You're just not trained. So the same thing, if we who are humans and finite, we can make that leap to understand certain of the laws that the God put in place. Same thing, the chukim, these laws, these decrees of God, these are rules that God put in the Torah that we have no benefit for them, like the mishpatim we benefit from them. However, but God really had a reason, a tam, a correct reason, and a toel shlema, and a complete purpose in giving us all of the mitzvot, including the chukim. So the Ramban is clearly taking a disagreement with what Dan said before. Okay? Or you're disagreeing with Ramban. Okay?
No, I don't disagree with anybody.
I'm just saying...
Just submitting an idea.
The idea that you suggested, I'm saying, is not with the Ramban. The Ramban is making it very clear that even the most obtuse chok that we can understand has a reason behind it. You're right. Now, maybe the part of the purpose is that we need to accept some of the laws without understanding a reason. That's correct in saying that. But God had some kind of purpose.
The way I read this, so the physical world is a world of darkness. We have the Torah as the light of how we should live. In darkness, we can't see here.
Sometimes we can.
It's very hard, Moshe.
But sometimes some laws make sense.
But if God created this world where there's so much of it that is invisible, We can't see that. All we have is the Torah.
Oh, okay,
They
but
give us eyesight to see the best we can see in a universe of darkness.
Okay,
So,
right.
utter darkness.
So I can understand, let's just take 1, 2 quick examples. I can understand why the Almighty would put certain breaks on prohibited relationships. God is saying to me that, you know what, sex has got certain limits, and there may be other reasons as well, and so therefore you can't marry your sister, and therefore you can't marry close relatives. There might be genetic reasons, as we know this today. When you inbreed people, and you have a closely knit family, you have your recessive genes are therefore going to come to the forefront, and that's probably unhealthy, because most diseases most difficulties and defects reside in defective genes. So the more you mix the genes, the less opportunity there is for certain recessive diseases to pop up. Okay, it doesn't mean you can eliminate them, but there's less chances. When you inbreed, you will be able to inbreed that specific genetic trait, and sometimes that can be negative. So therefore, there's logical reasons why laws of incest make sense, even though, look, I want to have relations with everybody in the world. Right, so there's putting brakes on it, and there may be other logical reasons. Shabbat, I work because it's important to have a day where there is a day that I can connect to the Almighty. Now, maybe I don't need that. Maybe I'd rather work another day, but there's logic behind it.
Our entire inbreeding is based on our long-lost relative Noah. That was inbreeding. We're here today because of that. He had to be with his family. Who did they have? The whole world was destroyed.
Correct. But after that, we begin to spread out. That's correct. And Cain and Abel married their sisters. Okay? Who did Cain and Abel marry? Who was there? So you're right. So initially you have this inbreeding, but eventually things spread out. And yes, we do stay within the tribe of Shem. And yes, we do stay within the Jewish faith community. But at the same time, the concept that there are prohibited relationships, I'm saying that's an example of a law that makes a little bit of sense to me. Shabbat makes sense to me. I can go through a number of laws. Some laws make no sense. Some laws I don't really understand, and I'll never understand. I don't say I'll never understand. It's highly likely I will understand. So all I'm saying is that there are laws that make sense, but there are laws that we have no way to kind of make a sense of them for us, because we don't see through the cloud, we don't see through the fog, we don't see through the invisibility. You're right. Okay. So that's the first piece. Let's move on to what Kalayim is. So what's the reason for Kalayim? And then we got to talk about cloning for a few minutes at least, or at least for a few seconds. V'atami Kalayim, the reason for Kalayim not to intermingle animals, Kashem bara minim ba'olam. God made different species in the world, b'chol ba'alei nefashot, in all different types of animals, and all different types of lives, b'tzmachim, b'ba'alei nefashot noah, whether it's plants, which are stationary, or animals that move, v'notan b'am koach hatoledet, and God created the power of reproduction, shitkaimu haminim ha'im la'ad, that these species will reproduce and be able to continue forever. Kol zman shirtzehu yitbarach b'kim olam, as long as the Almighty wants the world to go on. If there's no world, we don't reproduce. And God created in His strength, His wisdom, so to speak, that they will reproduce within their species, and they will not change forever. There's obviously going to be change because it's remixing of genes. Right? Sometimes a child looks like a father, sometimes looks like a mother, sometimes it's a mix. Sometimes genetics, by the way, is not either or. Sometimes it is combinations. So that in terms of hair colors, it's not one or the other, maybe combined. Intelligence can be combined. But still it's within the species themselves. And God commanded, therefore, the animals will conjugate with each other to ensure the survival of the species, in the same way that men and women conjugate together for reproduction. So what's wrong with therefore mixing things around? A person who therefore creates and causes two animals from disparate species to conjugate, to reproduce, and forces one to the other, whether it is artificial insemination or physical insemination. You actually insert the male into the female, which would not be done in nature, but would be done in captivity by a human intervener. So that's wrong, because what are you doing? You are denying what the Almighty made. You're saying what the Almighty made was not a complete world. The Almighty made everything the Almighty had all the ingredients in the soup for the cholent for the world, as if to say that he left out something and I got to now scramble around the ingredients to make another ingredients. Like God did not put everything He needed in the world, and I got to make something else. And a person therefore has to work in the creation of the world to make things, to make other types of creatures. That's number one. So the first thing is it looks like I'm denying that the Almighty's creating was perfect and complete. I'm saying that I know more than God. And man never knows more than God. I can outsmart the Almighty.
Would you say that Zimzum, the fact that God, like the
Zimzum,
yeah, that constraint that God put when God created that world and
pulled them contracted back, yes?
Would you say, Moshe, that in itself wasn't first imperfection? The fact that the universe was created was an imperfection itself?
We're getting into very deep Kabbalistic concepts that I'm going to be out of my depth in this. Okay?
Only because I wonder if God is so perfect.
Yeah, no, Shirat Kelim.
Why does He make children who have feminine features who are boys and the opposite?
Excellent question. I don't know if I have an answer for that.
Where's the perfection there?
I don't know if I don't know if I have an answer for that. And the other question you're going to say is why there are imperfect people being created in general. Why are the children created who have physical deformities, mental deformities? That's probably not a politically correct term. But who have certain weaknesses, certain special nature. Why does God create these kinds of things here on the world?
Back to my comment about Zimzum.
Yeah.
Maybe it's right there.
Maybe. I don't know. People have suggested that that people with Down syndrome are they're tzaddikim, but they also. But I was going to say something a lot more simple. Teach us how to be happy and loving. If you ever engage with a person who has Down syndrome, they're usually very happy and they're usually very outwarming. They're usually very warm. So somehow we need people in the world to be able to teach us these midot. That's a very simplistic approach, of course. I don't know it's really the full answer. I don't have the answer, but I don't have the answer for all kinds of issues. Look, the hospital sick kids is full of a lot of very serious illnesses. When I was a shul rabbi and I'd visit people in the hospital, the hardest ward to go to was the ped ward. Go see little kinderlach who are filled with tubes and everything. And we have modern medicine that can do miracles, and you probably all have stories to tell, so maybe I don't want to go too far with this, but I don't have the answer why, this is a subset of why good things happen to bad people, because there's nothing better than a child. There's nothing more pure than a child. I don't know the answer. And I don't know why some people are born in one form and some people are born in another form. I don't know the answer why some are more feminine, some more masculine, or what it really means. I don't know. I don't know the answer, but I do know what the Bible does talk about in terms of gender. But anyway, so in other words, God set up a world this way, and therefore if I frustrate God's world, if I make another species, I'm frustrating the fact that I'm showing that I don't believe that God made a complete world. I know man can improve things, but by improving things in a way that is physically making something that God did not make, that's a denial of God. There's a fine line between improving what God did and between breaking what God did and forming something brand new. And the second reason this says the Ramban, when you mix two different kinds of animals from two different species, even if you mix them together, most likely the offspring will be sterile. Okay, so in other words, and that, by the way, is true in the animal kingdom and it's true in the plant kingdom as well. When you build a mixture of different kinds of fruits, and people mix fruits to make things like, give me an example, a tangelo or a
grapefruit.
Grapefruit is a mix? No, grapefruit is a real fruit. It's not a mixture of grapes and fruits. Grapefruit's a real fruit. Not peaches. Why do they mix peaches?
Not peach, what's the name?
It's not a peach. The peach mixed with something else yields, I forget what now. So in other words, when you do this, you are actually saying that the species God made are not perfect. And on top of it, you see that you can't build a species that's new that will in itself be able to reproduce. And even when you find a few cases in nature where animals do interbreed, such as Gagon HaParadim, which are the mules, where we do find in nature that by virtue of convenience, sometimes horses and donkeys do intermate. Yikarei Zaram, their children can't exist. Yehem lo yolidu, the mule is sterile. Mule is a sterile animal. Mules cannot create more mules. The only way you get mules in the world is by mating donkeys and horses. So therefore, because of this, and therefore you see that when you intermate things together that are not supposed to be intermated, or crossbreed things that shouldn't be crossbred, then you're creating something that God does not accept, that God will become nullified, because A, God did not create it, and B, even if you create it, it can't reproduce itself. It's a dead end. It's a sterile end. So therefore, that shows that it was not meant to occur. So by your interbreeding animals or crossbreeding animals, you are denying God. Now, having said that, there's a fine line, as we pointed out. Dogs interbreed with each other. That's not interbreeding species, right? But when you're interbreeding things that cross certain boundaries, and I forget how the division is going to be, that's something that doesn't occur in nature. You're actually breaking with the rules. That is the reason why the Ramban says it is inappropriate. Okay. Now the Ramban also says this is true about plants as well. Same thing if you mix plants together. We talked about peaches becoming a nectarine. Peach and something else becomes a nectarine. But nectarines, the only way they grow nectarines is taking a shoot from the tree and replanting the shoot. It will not grow from seeds.
Is orange also?
Orange is a mix?
Sure, orange also. Orange is a mix of the...
Oranges you can plant.
Yes, orange is with khushkhush. Another tree.
Khushkhush is...
The fruit is not so sweet, but
no. So with khushkhush, you're thinking of something else. I think with a khushkhush, they tend to graft orange trees onto the base of a khushkhush tree. That's a separate thing. That's grafting. That's also prohibited. That's something is done because the khushkhush tree is a very strong tree. So they will take the stump, the trunk of a khushkhush tree, and put onto it the branches of an orange tree. I'm talking about there are ways that you can interbreed different types of trees together by interpollinating from one species to the other. That's how you make nectarine.
Cherry tomato in Israel, cherry tomato you see, yellow, you did mix it with date.
Okay.
Now with cherry tomato date,
it's all over.
Three fly out.
Yeah.
From the date.
But with dogs, you there is if you interbreed,
they will reproduce. They will or they won't.
Some of them will. Some of them will.
Yes, they will. Correct.
But also there is a difference in intelligence and between one breed and another.
Correct.
So you're creating something.
A new breed.
Right.
But I don't know if that interbreeding dogs is the same as interbreeding horses and donkeys.
No, I think that's different. It's different.
Right.
So, but all of them is the same. Tomato is exactly the same.
Okay.
The same size. Cherry tomato is exactly the same size.
No, it's not interbreeding. Okay. I'm not sure of all the details, and I'm not sure how to react to all the comments, but I know there are certain rules what works and what doesn't work. Sometimes, by the way, it's about matching up genes. Not every different species have different number of
chromosomes.
The chromosomes are on the genes. Are they different chromosomes? Yeah, different numbers of chromosomes. So if they have different numbers of chromosomes between the male and the female species, they're not going to get together. Or if they do get together, they get together in ways that are different. So sometimes you end up with an odd number of chromosomes, which is why you really can't reproduce in the next generation. So at any rate, so this is about animals, it's also about plants, and that's why the pasuk says, just moving a little further in the Ramban, this is why it says, Sad cholot tizrak kalayim, you cannot mix together your fields together, you can't plant two types of plants together. Why? Because, which is according to the Chachamim, also called Harkava, just skip a couple lines, the Asar av kilei zrayim, and also mixing together seeds, you can't plant two different groups of seeds together, because he says, this may not be true in botany, it says you put two different types of seeds together, they tend to kind of play off of each other, they tend to kind of be influenced by each other. I'm not sure if that's true. They surely kind of, one will beat out the other one. One will grab more nutrients than the other. It's possible that the offspring or the seeds will be mixed together, and that's another reason. At the very least, you're going to really have one group of seeds of plants that's playing more stronger than the other. And he says the same thing. You can plow together a donkey and an ox together in the same yoke. Because the reason you can't put a donkey and an ox together in the same yoke, says because you'll end up putting them in the same stall. And if you put them in the same stall, what may end up happening? They may end up conjugating together, which is suggested. There may be other reasons as well for that. So there are other. Those are the basic reasons for it. So that's pretty much what he says. And he says the one thing, and then I just want to reflect this because I still want to get to this piece from the Nesivos Shalom. He says as follows: that every species, and this is like a bump up step here. Here's where we're going into what you can understand to what you can't understand. It says every species has an angel that's in charge of it. Okay? Every species has an angel in charge of it. Mechavreinu, and he's right. And boy, he says one of our friends. He doesn't identify who it is. It looks like it could be an individual called Rabbi Ezra who lived around the time of the Ramban, not the Ibn Ezra. Rabbi Ezra, who said that the reason for kilayim, for not mixing up animals and not mixing up plants, not to create through the mixing of the ecology the different spiritual forces that cause these plants to grow. As it says in Breshit Rabbah, as it says in the Medrash, Amar Rabbi Simon, Ein lecha kol esav v'yesav milamata shein lo mazal b'rakia u'makeh oto v'omer gadel. There isn't every blade of grass has a separate angel that watches over it, and the angel watches to make sure that it will grow. So when you go out and you walk in the lawn and you rip out grass because you're talking to someone, you're hurting the angel that's watching over the blade of grass. You're looking strange at me. You look like
I'm listening intently.
You're listening intently. Okay, good.
Thinking as you're speaking.
Every blade of grass. Now, we think of angels like archangels, like, sitting over watching globally lots of things. Everything has some kind of spiritual connection. That is called an angel. It may not be an angel that you think of with wings. It's some spiritual power. So as a result, if every angel is watching over that, so when you start mixing together and you're going to take grass and develop into, mixing different species and developing different fruits and so forth, you are affecting not only the physical stuff in this world, you're having an impact on spiritual values, spiritual existence that we don't even begin to know how to understand. So that's a difficult concept, it's a deep concept, but it really kind of raises the ante of what we do when we mix species. Yes, Mars.
Is that the same thing that if you're at the cemetery when you're visiting the grave and you're tearing out a blade of grass?
So there's a purpose for it.
I know.
When I mow my grass too.
Right, I know, but I'm just saying when you're at the cemetery and you're visiting the graves and
right.
you're putting it on a stone. Under the stone, you're putting a blade of grass. Is that the same thing?
So the answer is there's a purpose for it. It's not that grass is holy. You can't work with it.
Right.
Hopefully, when you pull out the blade of grass, you're not pulling out the roots.
No.
That's right. So that's it.
So this is the same family, if you will, of a man lying only with a woman. But that's intermixing of the species. In other words, a man should only be with a woman as opposed to a man with a man.
Well, no. Man with a woman is the species. Reproduction is bisexual. That's probably not the right term to use. Reproduction is the mixing of two different genders.
But I'm saying, I wonder, I'm just thinking as you're saying this, as we're reading this.
All reproduction is based upon a male and a female.
But why? Why can't a man lie with a man, for instance?
So that's real.
It's not the same thing as interbreeding an animal?
There surely is no interbreeding in a man lying with a man. But that's a much further discussion, and I'm not really sure that I'm well versed enough to be able to deal with it right now. But that's really unrelated. That more falls under the rules of what are prohibited relationships, which God gave to us. Even though people are supposed to reproduce, and we put certain people are out of bounds, or certain things are out of bounds, whether they're close relatives, certain laws are incestuous, right? So this may be one of those rules. But the fact that you have a male and a female is something that applies to all higher organisms. Even in the plant kingdom, you have a pistil and stamen. You have two parts of the flower and all plants have a flower. Even the grass, you just don't see the flower. The grass is so small. The question is, some plants can actually propagate themselves by sharing some of the pollen from the stamen to the pistil, a pistil stamen, I forget which way it goes, within the flower itself. Some trees need to have it from another tree, a nearby tree, or a nearby plant, or a different plant, and that's where the birds and that's where the bees come about, as they transfer the pollen from one plant to another. They're not transferring from one tree to another tree. They're transferring from one tree or one blossom to another blossom to be able to pollinate. Pollinate is another form of causing germination, to build the fruit or to build the seeds, whatever it is. All plants will have a seed. I'll say all will have a seed. The seed may be in a fruit, or the seed may be a seed, or the seed may be so small you don't even see it. But that's what happens when the grasses grow. That's what happens when your plants grow. That's how your flowers grow. That's how your trees grow. And they all have a giver and they all have a receiver. In the same way that in animal reproduction you have a male who is giving the semen and you have a female who is the receiver. Okay? So at any rate, this is really what he's saying. So the purpose of this is really to follow with God's creation. Now, what about cloning? Okay, so cloning is a complex topic. Is cloning permissible or not? Now, here's the difference between cloning and between what's going on here. Cloning is being done on a microbial level. It's being done on a level that you cannot see the actual fertilization. You cannot see the egg itself. So we have a rule in halacha that sometimes when you can't see something, it's not considered like you're physically making a change. Later on, when you build this cloned person, or if we build a cloned person or a cloned animal, so the animal is still the same animal. Haven't changed the species, just the form of reproduction is going to be different. The real issue is going to come up in terms of a chimera, which are types of animals that are really combination animals. Can you do that? Can you actually mix, for example, monkeys and other kinds of animals and build all kinds of different creatures? Sometimes in the lab they can do things that really can't be done in nature. Do you do it on a microscopic level? And you're building the initial fetus or the initial gestation is done within a petri dish. So is that going to be? That's a very complex discussion. Would something like that be considered the same prohibition as taking the semen of a lion and inserting it into a tiger, or taking the semen of a horse and inserting it into a donkey? Whether it's done manually or whether it's done by the animal himself, helped by a shepherd, or helped by a human interferer. That's complex. It may be a little different, it may not be a little different, and the jury's still out on those tshuvot that are coming in both ways. But cloning itself is simply just trying to reproduce the same species, only just reproducing it from one person.
Eve was created through the rib of Adam.
Yes.
Did you say that's cloning? What is the portion?
Yeah, it's cloning. Okay, fine.
But it's different than the micro.
But it's different than combining two different types of things. Cloning is basically saying that I'm taking a person's cell, and I'm causing that cell, which is already started as a cell, to reproduce on its own. So if I can take my cells that are here and cause them to go back to becoming a very primitive state, or I can take a germ cell and include a nucleus on a nuclear level, then I can reproduce that person and build a cell within that person.
But there's an issue there.
There are a lot of issues.
The issue is, if we are our own universe, everyone here is made for its own self, or our own world, right?
Yeah.
If you're cloning and there's two of you, you're not in your own universe anymore. How do
Correct.
you reconcile that?
Correct. It becomes complex in terms of, is this my daughter or is this my sister or my brother? Is this my brother or my son? Who is it? Is this really me? The questions that I don't have an answer for, and everybody asks, and I don't know how to answer, is when does the soul get put in? Where is the soul? When does this happen? I don't even know if anyone knows how to kind of direct that answer. But cloning has a lot of significance in terms of people who can't reproduce in other ways. On the other hand, we don't know the long-term longevity of cloned people. When you're taking a cell, it's like buying a reconditioned engine. forgive the analogy, when you buy a reconditioned engine, you're not buying a new engine, you're buying an engine that's been fixed up. So you may have the same problems that an engine will have that you already have 50,000 kilometers on it. When you get this reconditioned engine, the reconditioned engine has 50,000 kilometers. It's just been all the pieces that broke have been fixed up, but some of them are still old. So we find out there may be premature aging in a cloned person. But cloning is not the same as talking about breaking species. There are challenges about cloning, and that is about building super races. Right? If you decide you want to clone all the strong people, then you end up with something like Nazi Germany wanted to do, Aryan races.
Right at 11 a.m.
Holy smolies. Okay, let's take the break here and quickly get the coffee before he takes it.
Mike, I'm very impressed, by the way.
You guys wait.
We're going to see what I'll do it after the break. Okay, no, we're starting now. We'll get to it. I thought we could get to it before the break. I'll do it right now.
You're the next generation. We need you awake.
Okay, 5-minute break.
Yes.
I don't want to take it until everybody takes.
I'm not going to take the second one. Stroking
Already had one. I'm still working on my old coffee. I tell you, it's such a contentious issue what we're discussing. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
That's what we're doing to see the show. It's going to settle us down. Or maybe not. Maybe it's just going to rattle us up more. This is good. Okay. Let's put this here. I'm listening.
For the same species having sex, that's a definite abomination. It's a definite abomination.
Same gender, you mean?
Same gender, yeah.
Yes, I agree.
It's a definite abomination.
It's really unrelated to the topic here. Let me just take this
Yeah,
first.
it's not related.
Okay. Shabbos. And of course, Shabbos is a special day. Erev Shabbos is getting ready for Shabbos. Also has the spirit of that Shabbos. Erev Shabbos in the afternoon has a spirit of the Shabbos begin as well. So Shkoach, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's very special. Okay, so just if you have your Chumashim, page 672. Okay, not in your Chumash. Your Chumash is probably fine. I think I could get just the beginning of the parsha just for a minute. Then we'll come to what's first and second Ramban. So Sefer, this book of the Bible is called Sefer Vayikra, but in English it's called Leviticus, right? And it's sometimes I think we've said that sometimes in some of the it's called Torah's Kohanim. Leviticus is Levium. Levium is the book of Levium. It's Latin. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers. Okay, so but in many of the medieval Sfarim, in many of the Rishonim and sometimes the other Sfarim as well, call this Torah's Kohanim. It's called the Torah of the Kohanim because most of what's found in this book, and that's where Leviticus comes from. Leviticus I know is Levium, but Kohanim are Levium, and therefore in the Latin became Leviticus, and in the Hebrew became Torah's Kohanim. We call it Vayikra only because that's really the first word, and really it's about a lot of Hashem speaks to Moshe, but Moshe, what God speaks to Moshe is about laws about Kohanim. So even though in the last couple of weeks in Kedoshim, and last week especially, there was a lot of mitzvot that applied to everybody, most of the Sefer deals with Kohanim. So we had the beginning of the Sefer talked about different karbanos, Vayikra, Tzav. Shmini was about the dedication of the base of the Mishkan, which is about the Kohanim. Then we had Tazriya Mitzvah, which was about the laws of Tzaras, which you had to come to the Kohen, laws of impurity, laws of purify. People had to get purified in the base Mikdash with the Kohanim. Yerach Remos, which deals with Yom Kippur, which is of course Kohanim. Kedoshim was a plethora, a potpourri of different halachas, and Parshas Emor opens up by talking about the laws of Kohanim that talk about actually the laws of Tumah. When Kohen can become Tamei or cannot become Tamei. And these are actually one of the few laws of Kohanim that really apply as a law that a Kohen, as you know, cannot go to a cemetery, cannot be under the same roof as a mace. That's called Tumas Ohel. So either the Kohen can't be over a mace, the mace can't be over a Kohen, or both of them cannot be under the same roof. So, for example, in the funeral parlors, they have a separate room, which is really a separate roofed area. They're one next to each other, but they're really distinct areas. In Steele's, it's right up front. In Benjamin's, it's actually right in the back. But they're both built the same way, so Kohanim can actually go in there, be present, and yet not become tamei. It's really permissible for a Kohen to go into a cemetery in an area where there are no kvaros. So just give me half a sec. So, for example, if there's a main road at the entrance to a cemetery, or even between the kvaros, for example, like Bathurst Lawn, there's this big road. And that's clearly it's a new cemetery, relatively new cemetery. We know there are no graves there. A Kohen actually could go there, not go into the graves itself, but it couldn't go where the graves are. Actually, yes.
I have a question with the Tuma. What going on with the fly? Kohen with the airplane. That's my.
So
I don't know if you can maybe the subject.
So the answer is that if there is a tefach of air above the kohen in a separate area, then actually that and the area is closed. Let's say the kohen were in a room and the doors were closed in the room. A kohen can actually be in the same building as a place where there is a mace in the room, and the mace is in a room that's closed up. It doesn't have to be airtight. Mm-hmm. So but that's very rare because someone will open the room, right, and spoil the connection. For example, so let me, before I come to airplanes, in Shaarei Tzedek, which is a hospital that tries to be built based upon halacha, the morgue there has a double set of doors, like an airlock, like they used to have in the mines, where there was a double set of doors, so that when one door opens, the other is closed. When one door closed, the other is open. Yeah. Because really, in a hospital in Eretz Yisrael, in Chutz La'aretz, most of the people who are in the hospital are not Jews. And therefore most of the people who are nebuch going to be kept in the morgue in the hospital are probably not Jews. So chances are at any one time you don't know for sure, you don't really know that you have a dead person in the hospital. Even though people, more people survive, not everybody does survive, there are fatalities within the hospital, but nonetheless the chance of it being a Jew is very small. So we're somich on the rove unless we know that there's a Jew there. In Eretz Yisrael, most of the people are Jews, right? So therefore, and we know that not everybody, people go into the hospital, not everybody is able, unfortunately, to get out. So when they built Shaarei Tzedek, they built in such a way that where they keep the mesim until they actually take them out of the hospital is going to be considered a separate area. Why is it a separate area? Even though it's the same roof, but it's really always going to be closed. One set of doors will be closed when the other one opens up. Mm-hmm. That's how they built it. So then in the airplanes, and someone told me that it's different between El Al and between Air Canada, but I don't know if that's really true. That in El Al, for sure, the way they transport the mace is transported in some kind of container. I think it's called a Ziegler, after the guy who invented it. Don't worry about any Zieglers who are lying in this container, but it's some kind of body container. The ones the compartment in the El Al planes apparently has more than a tefach of airspace above where the mace is stored.
Only one tefach.
One tefach of clear airspace. Yeah, I believe it's one tefach.
If you really take the box with still a moria, do you have a tefach?
Maybe it's 3 tvachim. Okay. So, but apparently in the El Al planes, I know they have for sure not a problem with the Kohanim. I've heard conflicting reports about the Air Canada planes. They tried to ship the Mesim over from here to Eretz Yisrael. They tried to ship them with El Al. The different flights, the flights run sometimes about the same time. So that's what I was told. So the answer is, if it's in the separate area of the plane, the hold is closed. You really can't get from the hold into the passenger compartment. There's really
always going there. Any they go in the luggage.
They go with the luggage, correct?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the different door. Is a different door and different.
Correct. The luggage compartment doesn't go into where the passenger compartment is.
So
and apparently whatever connection could be is clearly closed and separate. So therefore that's considered a separate area, and if there's enough airspace, that's considered a separating piece between them. So that's basically the halacha.
So but it's not a big problem, really not a problem.
So that's why it's not a problem. It's not a problem in the El Al flights for sure, that even though they do transport periodically Mason, people who pass away here which will get transport to Eretz Yisrael for Kvura. I told you I've heard conflicting reports about the Air Canada flights. I don't know the answer, but I've been told that they try to get people on. They try to get the Mason onto the El Al flights, and it basically the Mace is being shipped. You excuse my saying so, as air freight.
No, it depends what. El Al full flight. I took unfortunately one time. It's $100.
Okay.
Like boxes.
Okay, like extra luggage.
Yeah.
Very nice. Okay, good. I don't know.
$1,200? $100.
So I don't know.
Oh, you got to pay $1,200 plus the $100.
No. Different. I was my mother-in-law. I took it in the.
I don't know.
The airfare you got to pay.
I don't know, and I'm really not that versed
Not
in
in
it.
LA you pay full fare.
Oh, in LA, you pay full fare. What's $100?
If you if you go to not to LA, you go to Air Canada.
They only charge you $100 for a body?
$100,
I don't believe that. I don't believe that. It's overweight.
Because the law, I think, has a special compartment.
I don't know.
Accommodation.
Anyways, I don't know. We're off topic. So back here. So what really comes up most frequently is really the mace goes to has to go to a funeral, and we have a separate room. I remember I had a friend in Boston who was a Kohen, and there this is what's the main boulevard in Brooklyn? I forgot the name of it. What it's called? There was a big tree that was over the funeral home. No, Boston. I say Boston. I mean Brookline and Boston. Brookline and Boston. Maybe it's Commonwealth Avenue. But there was a big, spreading tree over the funeral home, and as a result, he had to really cross the street to go around it because it would be an ohel. Same thing, by the way, here in Bathurst Lawn. Bathurst Lawn goes right against Chelmsford. He would know, he lives in that area. And if you're a Kohen, you really can't walk along the side of the cemetery because of the trees that are really going to be ohel on top of the kvaros and on top of the sidewalk itself. Your area.
Right.
Okay.
But I'm closer to the other end.
You don't go, you won't. But I think it's Chelmsford in the back of the cemetery.
Right.
So in Chelmsford, you really have to cross the street because the old trees have really moved over to the cemetery. And there was a point where they didn't plant near the fence of the cemetery, but now it's pretty much filling up. Anyway, so this is halacha that applies to Kohanim. And so the first part of this parsha talks about who they cannot become tamei to and who they can become tamei. They can become tamei to anyone except Aviv, Imo, and this is pasuk 2, the 7 relatives, mother and father, son and daughter, brother and sister and spouse. Okay, and that's included as well. So these are the 7 permitted relatives, which even, by the way, a Kohen Gadol cannot be permitted to become tamei for. There are also rules that apply in this here that apply to all kinds of funerals, all kinds of laws about avelas that it talks about in pasuk 5, and it talks about the fact they can't to shave the edge of their beards, they can't make gashes, they can't do these kinds of laws, these kind of rules which looks like other people did, and they're kadosh. And because they serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And another thing that comes up, Isha Zonah v'chala lo yikachu, v'isha gvusha meisha lo yikachu.
And the wife is not included in this?
The wife is included.
Where?
It says, L'sheira krovei love. It's a drasha from the first word, the relative who is close to him. That's included. That means the spouse.
Oh.
Okay? So even though it doesn't say Ishto, the most closest relative that he has is the person he's married to. Okay, this, by the way, for the sake of completeness, these prohibitions apply to male Kohanim. They do not apply to female Kohanim. So a female Kohenet is permitted to go to a cemetery. This just applies to male Kohanim who did the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. And the last thing on the page talks about the fact that there are certain prohibitions for a Kohen who the Kohen can marry. Specifically and most directly, he cannot marry a divorcee. Isha grusha meisha lo yikachu. So, and that's a law that even applies to today. Okay? Now, the pasuk that I want to focus in on these first 7 psukim is really pasuk 6, and it says, in identifying what the Kohanim are, and the reason perhaps why they can't do this, why it's prohibited for them to kind of be involved in being metamei. So pasuk 6 says, pasuk vav says, Kedoshim yiyu leLohem v'lo yichalu shem Elohem ki es kashei Adonai lechem Elohem hem akrivim v'hoyu kodesh. So the pasuk says they're holy to Hashem, Kedoshim, and they shall therefore not desecrate Hashem's name because they are going to do things that they bring lechem Elohem, the bread of their Hashem, and they bring, and they're kodesh, and they're holy. So what does the term holiness mean? Okay, so that's what I want to talk about. What does actually means to be kadosh, and how does that relate? Therefore, they can't become, they can't be connected to the dead, and why there's certain strictures that are there. So, what does that really mean? So, you can understand very simply that if you're holy and you're working in the Beis Hamikdash, you can't become tamei because you can't work in the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, but so what? Why can't you take a day off? So what does it really mean? So if you look, so the Ramban is the Ramban that I want to do on this pasuk, and it's going to take us back to a Ramban at the beginning of Parshas Kedoshim. So you guys have it there on page 596, and it's here we have the Hebrew Rambans. There's an English one here I'll find for you guys. Okay. So we have the first one on Parshas EMOR. Okay. Second, hold on. There we go. Pasuk 6 in the middle of Pasuk 6. 6 here, and then we have this. You guys all come together or something. I don't know how you want to divide this up. Okay. So there's a short Ramban, but he's going to take us back to a long Ramban in Parshas Kedoshim. So there we go. Don't put them all away. We're going to need them again. Pasuk Vav on the right side. Okay, let's see. If we look on together, maybe share some stuff around. Maybe Jeff, you can move around a little bit and share it with Morris. Okay. There we go. Okay, we'll have Nida Chumash again. Okay, so what does the Ramban say in Pasuk Vav? Ramban's short Ramban, it says Kedoshim yu lelokehem lokechem, that you'll be kadosh to Hashem. So says the Ramban, what does the word kedusha mean? HaKedusha hi haprishus. That kedusha actually refers to separating yourself from things that you should be permissible to do. You're going to separate yourselves from. Kasher pirashi b'sei deshemalal. The Ramban tells us, like I explained earlier on in last week's parsha, we're going to come see that in 1 minute. And what it means, Yomar shafil b'mutar l'Yisrael yeh konim prushim. So what it means to say the kohanim are kadosh, that even that which is permissible to everyone else is going to be prohibited to them. So the term kedusha means, as he continues, yibadlu mitumat hametim nusuei hanashim she'ena hagunot. Therefore, they have to be separated from becoming. They can't become tamei to the deceased. Everyone else can, but they're going to be excluded from this, and they can't marry even women which are normally permissible to be married to all other members of the Jewish faith community, divorcees, because she'en hagunos lahem b'tar b'nekios. They're not maybe the ideal. They've already been married once, they were divorced, something didn't go well. It's not clear what makes them less than ideal, but somehow there's something that's normally is permissible and should be permissible, but being kadosh means that even that which is permissible suddenly is prohibited to you. So the Ramban is putting down a basic theme here about what kedusha means, about what kadosh is. And let me just say it, and then we'll see it more clearly in the Ramban and last week's parsha. When you think of kadosh, you're thinking that something is okay, right? But even though it's okay, I'm going to stay separate from it. So it's a little different. Let me say what I'm not saying. What I'm not saying is that a kadosh is a person who stays away from something that's prohibited to him. Something is wrong, something is usher, something is not permissible, so I stay away from that. That's not considered a kadosh. That's considered regular. The Ramban is suggesting that the word kadosh means even if something is 100% A-OK, there are things that are A-OK that I should stay away from. In other words, even which is prohibited is clearly out of the picture. But even something that looks like it's okay, I should still separate myself from some of the things. So the Ramban is applying this to the Kohanim. So the Kohanim, obviously, it's prohibited to marry a divorcee, it's prohibited to become Tameh, except for the 7 relatives. But really the Ramban says, these people, the divorcee is 100% a member of the Jewish faith community, there's nothing wrong, she got a proper get. Why should it be prohibited to a Kohen? That Kohen somehow stays away from even things that are permitted, and there's certainly reasons to go to a cemetery to give kavod to the mace. So the Ramban says, but a Kohen, because a Kohen is special, he should not become Tamei, even though everybody else can become Tamei. Am I making sense? Okay.
Well, the Tamei makes sense because he can be, any moment he can be called to do Avodah, and you can't go to do Avodah if you have Tamei.
Yeah, but he'll call in sick that day. He'll call off, he'll just book out. What the reason why she is, it's not clear why divorcee would be, why divorcee would...
has a clear reason.
Right, correct.
It's like a prohibition. Really.
Correct.
Very close to a prohibition.
It's not clear. It's not clear in my mind why this type of woman would be prohibited to a Kohen. That's correct.
She's with another man, no?
Correct, but it does not apply to an almana. A widow is permitted to a Kohen. Only a divorcee is not.
The Kohen Gadol.
Maybe there's a chance you'll get back together with the other guy.
Maybe there's another guy hanging around.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be three. Be three people in bed, so to speak. I don't know what to say. It's not clear to me why this is any different than anything else. But somehow you do see from the Ramban that this woman, even though she's okay, she's still prohibited. Yeah.
Why Kohen don't go to Met? What the Tumas?
What is
Met? Why?
Why Kohen can't go to a mace? Because mace. Why? The question what you're asking is why is a mace metame?
Yeah.
So the answer is because the most really defiling feeling about life is being with a deceased person. You just talked about your mother passing away. For you were involved in the funeral arrangements. But if you ever come across a case where a person has passed away, it's a very unusual feeling. Once it happened to me. A person I didn't even know. I was making rounds in a hospital, and I came to visit some people who were part of my shul, and I went from room to room, and actually I usually went to see what the Jewish patients were as well. And I came into one room, and there was an older person. I'm an older person. I'm saying a really old person, okay? And the person had obviously just deceased. They just died, and you could see that the person was not breathing. There was nothing, no trauma. I don't even know what they died from. So I remember I went to the nurse's station to tell them, and they didn't know about it either. It was like, the person had been obviously lying for a long enough time that there was no concept of trying to do resuscitation or whatever. They just basically, we covered her over. I asked her, can I close her eyes? Right? Because I'm a Jewish person. I said, can I help? Can I detach the IV? Because these are all, because they're going to move the person eventually, they have to detach the IV. So I said, look, I as a member of the Jewish faith community, I'd rather be the one to do this kind of work. There was minimal work that was done before they would then, be moving the patient out. But the problem I have to tell you is, I'm just looking at a patient who had passed away that was no longer alive, was a very de-living kind of experience. Because it's like seeing someone is alive, and I never met this person before. I didn't know who they were. I don't remember their name. It just was a random patient in a hospital. But just seeing that eye to eye suddenly made me realize, the tenuousness of life. And that becomes a way that maybe is the source of what Tumah is. So Tumah's mace, however you try to explain it, I think you really feel it a little bit differently when you actually see it. Now, what happens to us is we kind of make death kind of very parav. When people are no longer buried, and if you go to Eretz Yisrael and you see the mace covered in a stretcher, and you can see the outline of the mace, it's a lot more raw, right? If you hear it's a mace is in a coffin, it's hard to imagine sometimes there's actually a mace in the coffin itself. You can fool yourself in thinking that you're a deceased, a body, a corpse. Okay. In other words, you see the coffin, but really to imagine that the person is in the coffin lying there is sometimes very difficult. We're using our visualization and our imagination because we don't know how the person really is lying in there. But if you see an Eretz Yisrael where the body simply lies, is covered in tachrichim and shrouds, and then covered over with a sheet, you see the outline of the body. Especially if you're at the cemetery when they transport it and putting it into the grave, it's much more real, and it really makes you aware here's a person that was alive who's no longer alive. That is a very defiling experience. That's the best I can explain it to you, why it's tamei. Because we live with life. We try to save life. We try to extend life. We try to make people make their lives meaningful. And here you have a person who no longer can really be part of this world where we can really try to improve ourselves. That's just a default. That's how I understand it. I don't have a better way. If someone else has a better way to understand Tumas Mace, please explain it.
I don't know if the Rambam was said because those days the Egyptian
worship
the Med,
maybe possibly
they want the Jewish people go like you'll be far from the dead is finished.
Okay.
Kohani
maybe possibly.
Well, the Egyptians are not actually believe in the underworld.
Yeah.
Right. Correct. So this is about Kohanim. So I haven't really explained to you everything about Kohanim because I haven't explained really about a Grusha. I don't know that I have a good explanation. But I have explained to you why Tumah is something, a Kohen who really works on extending the life of the Jewish people, building the connection, the living connection of the Jewish people to Hashem and the Beis HaMikdash. The Kohen gives the bracha, even the Berachas Kohanim today is really the tzinor, the pipe, that connects the Almighty to the Jewish people who are alive. We're all alive when we get the Berachas Kohanim. Why being in contact with a dead body would be a defiling experience. What I want to make now the connection is, what does this mean to the rest of us who are not Kohanim? Who's a Kohen around the table? Any Kohanim? Am I in safe ground? Okay. Who's a Levi? Are you a Levium? Am I the only Levi? Okay.
You're a Levi?
I am a Levi.
Oh, I didn't know.
So you're a Kohen then.
Well, no, I'm not a Kohen. I'm actually not a Kohen.
Kohen is a Levi.
You know that they did this genetic gene for the Kohanim, which they feel is pretty strong. There's one gene that they feel is the Kohen gene. It's a Kohanim have a very high percentage of this gene, which really implies purity of lineage. However, it doesn't work out for the Levium. They can't find the gene that's special. So it means we're as mixed as everybody else. Anyways, in the beginning of Parshas Kedoshim, so the pasuk says, and some of you have the Chumash, some of you don't have the Chumash. We'll take you back to Ramban in a minute. But last week's Parsha, the Parsha opened up. It's called Parshas Kedoshim. It says, "Naber kol adas meisov yamartu alehem Kedoshim to you. You will be kadosh." Okay, why? Ki kadosh ani Hashem lakecha. I, because I, my God, are kadosh. So what does it mean in terms of being kadosh for the Jewish people? What is Kedoshim? I told you directly we know what it is Kadosh for the Kohanim. They can't become defiled. There's certain people they can't marry. What does it mean for the Jewish people when it says Kedoshim to you, Kedoshim to you? And how does that connect into the same term of Kedoshim? So the Ramban already told us, and the Ramban we just saw in this week's Parsha, he said, I explained the same thing earlier on. So the Ramban is actually giving us the second step to apply it to the Kohanim. The same way the Kohanim should really be allowed to do everything like anyone else, but because they are Kadosh, to be Kadosh means even if something is A-okay, I'm going to put it on the side. So what does it mean for us who are not Kohanim? So if you go back to the first Ramban on the Parshas Kedoshim, I'm not sure what page you got it here.
Kuftet Vav.
Right, so it's actually over here. It says page 515.
Kuftet Vav.
Kuftet Vav. It's the second Ramban, Kedoshim to you. Okay.
Second Ramban or on Pasuk Bet?
Kedoshim to you. Is that Pasuk Bet?
No.
It is Pasuk Bet, Yutet Bet.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the first Ramban.
But it might be the continuation of the first one there. Kedoshim to you. Okay?
Few lines, 5 lines from the bottom.
5 lines from the bottom. No,
from
here.
the top, from the...
Okay, right here. Good. We have it. Most of you have it?
Yeah.
If you don't have it, chapter 19. You in chapter 19? They got it backwards. Oh my goodness gracious.
In the middle of the line, Kedoshim.
Which is backwards. I can't do backwards upside down.
Yes.
Okay. Leviticus, Achimos, Kedoshim. There should be 19, the first one in chapter 19. One day we're going to get more books here for everybody. Alright. Should be here, Kedoshim, speak to the children of Israel, and this will be it. We shall be holy. Okay. So the basic topic of Parshas Kedoshim, what I told you, there are a number of mitzvot there, but included in the Parshas Kedoshim is also parts about prohibited relationships towards the end of the Parsha. So first Ramban says as follows, Kedoshim to you, he quotes Rashi, this is in last week's Parsha, have a prushim and arayatim and haberov. Stay away from the prohibited relationships, stay away from that is prohibited.
Is Rashi, no?
He's quoting Rashi, Shekol makom shatam motzei geder erva tam motzei kedusha. Wherever you see things that are prohibited relationships, you talk about holiness. So the first thing is, he says, Rashi says that Kedoshim means if it's wrong, stay away from what's wrong and you'll be okay. It's not that, which is not what he said. Then he tells us his pshat. Aval betart konim riti stam. But I saw in the Medrash Tart Konim, it says as follows, Prushim to you, be separate. Be separate. Parush means to be separated from. The Prushim were called Prushim because they were separate from the Tzedukim, the Sadducees. Okay, the Misnagdim, you know about Hasidim and Misnagdim? Yes, you do. Sure. The two groups of Jews are either Hasidim or non-Hasidim. What are non-Hasidim called? Misnagdim. So in Hebrew, they're actually called Hasidim, and sometimes Prushim is the word sometimes used in Hebrew, modern Hebrew. So Misnagdim means they are opposed. So you have the Hasidim and those opposed to the Hasidim. In Hebrew, we have the word sometimes Hasidim and Prushim. The Hasidim and those who separated from the Hasidim. So Prushim means separate. That's all I'm trying to explain to you. Be sanctified, be holy, and be holy because God, I'm holy, says God. Same way that I am holy, so you should be holy. Kishem shani parush, the same way that I am separated, so you should also be separated itself. In other words, once again, it doesn't really tell us anything. And then it says, the next words where the Ramban really brings out his law. You see, he goes into great detail here. To be separated does not mean to be separated from that which was prohibited relationships. What it means is what the Talmud uses the word prushim, and I'll explain that in a moment, that they're separated even from what is permissible. So and the Ramban says, if you find many times the term prushim that the Talmud talks about, are the prushim who were separated from the stukim. Why were they prushim? They were called prushim because they were not only separated from the stukim, they would try to eat only things that were tahar. There's nothing wrong with eating things that are tamei, but you can't go to the Beit Mikdash. But the prushim in the Talmud, in the Second Temple era, referred to in the Talmud and Mishnayot, did not eat even that which was permissible because they wanted to eat things in a certain degree of sanctity. So if something became tamei, there's nothing wrong with our eating anything that's tamei. We eat many things that are tamei today, but you would not be able to go to the Beit Mikdash until you became tahar. So the prushim separated from that which was permissible, and therefore, I'm sorry for taking such a long time to get there, but here's the key: Yinyan ki haTorah hisira barayot of machalim asurim. The Torah prohibited us from prohibited relationships and from prohibited foods. V'tira bia ish bishto. However, a man and a wife are permitted to have relations together. You can't have relations with your sister. You can't have relations with a close relative. You can't have relations with certain other people, and that's all enumerated in Kedoshim. However, once you're married, everything is okay, right? V'achilot abasavayan. You can't eat certain things, but you can drink. You can eat meat, and you can drink wine. It's got to be kosher meat, right? It's got to be kosher wine. But it means there are certain things that you can eat, and you can have a good time in this world, just living it up, and just enjoying this world. So you could live a life of debauchery by simply just living with one woman and bedding the woman the whole day, eating meat and wine 24/7, and guess what? It's okay. What a life. But what's wrong with that life? What's wrong with that life if it's okay? No one thinks there's anything wrong with the life. Okay,
it's not the life of Torah.
Why is it not a life of Torah? Because things are out of balance. Here's what the Ramban is saying. The Ramban is saying if you really want to be kadosh, you got to find a balance, even that which you can take. And people often talk about the fact that the Torah is restrictive. The Torah doesn't let me do things. The truth is, yes, that's true, but even what the Torah does permit me to do it, I can run away wild with it. Right? There's nothing that says that I can't eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. Right? As long as I make the brachas, as long as the food is kosher. What's going to be wrong with that? Well, first of all, biologically, medically, it's wrong. Well, because the body is telling me something is wrong with that kind of food. Second of all, it's probably, besides being directly unhealthy, it's not just long-term unhealthy, it's probably short-term unhealthy. And third of all, you're doing nothing in life. They'll say, what did you do in life? I ate. And what else did you do in life? I ate more. But I ate kosher. The answer is shkoyach. But you did nothing wrong, but you did nothing right. In other words, you did nothing wrong, but you missed the opportunities of doing something else in life. But I didn't have to do anything else in life. You told me, God, that I just got to eat kosher. And I went to make sure I had super glad kosher meat, and I went to super kosher wine, and my whole day I was a wino, drinking kosher wine, and I was a glutton eating meat. What's wrong? The answer is there's really nothing wrong with it, but it's not kadosh. Because I've lost an inner balance. Sometimes the balance, I have to find a balance, even if the Torah lets me do something, I still got to make sure that I balance out things in my life. So in the same way that you try to balance out your eating, your physical and your spiritual, and you don't look in the Torah, you don't say, where is in the Torah to say that I have to learn so many days, and I have to eat so much food, and I got to walk so many kilometers, and I've got to do this and that. Where does it come? So it really doesn't come in the Torah. It comes from an inner sense of knowing what the Torah really expects me to do, things that have value. So this may be kind of scary to say because you're not going to find this in the book where it says eat so many grams and don't eat more of the grams and more of this and drink so much and doesn't say how much to do, doesn't say how much to drink, how much to eat, how much to walk, and how much to learn, right? But it does to some extent talk about leading a healthy life and does talk about really trying to be in balance. So therefore, says the Ramban, when the Torah tells me in Parshas Kedoshim to be kadosh, it's not saying be a good Jew. It's being a Jew that is a holy Jew. Holiness is an additional step. And therefore, let's go back in the Ramban. You'll see the Ramban.
Neither the Rashi or the Ramban explain the end of the sentence, which is Kadosh Ani.
Correct.
What does that mean? What does it mean, Kadosh Ani? Hashem says Kadosh Ani.
In other words, it means what
is Hashem abstaining from anything, Asur.
So what the Ramban is trying to say, that if we do this, we will be like, we can attach ourselves closer to God.
Not be like God.
Not you cannot become a God. In other words, the Ramban talks at the end of this, because we'll be kadosh, we will have a greater chance to attach ourselves to God. What do I mean to attach ourselves to God? To understand what God really wants from us. It also means that maybe we're in a better ability to help other people. Same way God feeds and clothes, and God makes us be able to survive. We can help other people survive as well. That's Kedoshim to you sometimes talks about Lidavik Bashem. Okay, but that's called Dvekus Bashem. Dvekus Bashem, to be a Davik Bashem, you have to really not just do what's permissible, you have to do something that's holy. It's a good point, though. Do you understand the answer? So at any rate, at least some of an answer. So let's go back and read the Ramban. The Ramban is fairly direct about it. I know some of you may say this is opening more questions than it answers, but we can reflect once you do this paragraph in the Ramban. So therefore, in Cain, I can be in bed with my wife, I can eat meat, I can drink wine. In Cain yimtza balatayva makom liat shatuf bezimat ishto on noshav rabon. And therefore, a person could be simply involved in sexuality with his wife, or if you talk about a world that allowed polygamy, you can have multiple wives. Right, so and they're all legal, they're all legitimate wives in a polygamous world, which existed really in Sephardic lands, which existed in antiquity in all countries for Jews. A person can be like those who take in a lot of wine or to just eat a lot of fatty meat. And you can actually begin saying all kinds of things that were doing all kinds of things that you'd say and do that were just despicable. There's really nothing wrong with even speaking things that are wrong. In other words, saying bad words. Where does it say you can't say bad, dirty language? Where does it say you can't say disgusting things? Where does the Torah say that?
That's what it does say somewhere.
Where? Talk about Kedusha.
I don't remember.
What's bad about using 4-letter words? People use them all the time. They just erase them for expletives when they record them. So the answer is there's nothing wrong with it, but it's not refined. It's uncouth. It's not. You don't go to jail for using bad words.
There's something good about Lashon Nekiyah because it refines your thought.
Correct. That's Kedusha. There's nothing wrong with Lashon Lo Nekiyah. There's nothing prohibited with it. You see, the Torah goes out of its way to give Lashon Nekiyah clean language. But it's not a prohibition like eating non-kosher. It's not a prohibition like eating on Yom Kippur.
Maybe it's metamet halev, the same as non-kosher food metamet.
Maybe, but Torah doesn't say that. Naval b'shut Torah. You can be naval. You can be like disgusting with reshut Torah. Therefore, this pasuk comes along after listing many of the prohibited relationships, prohibited statements that were found in the Torah, and to tell us in a general way that we are prohibited in even things that are permissible to us, which means you might mishkal, so you should reduce the amount of time that you're having sex with your wife. The Talmud says that the scholars should not be together with their wives like the rooster is together with the chickens. In other words, and the rooster was always a sign of promiscuity for some reason. And he should be involved with this as much as he needs. The body needs it. The body is healthy to some extent, but an overindulgence may not be good. And a person should sanctify himself from his wine by minimizing it. Doesn't mean it's prohibited, but keep it in check. As it says, Hanazir Kadosh, the same way in Bamidbar, in Parshas Chukas, I think, it talks about the Nazir who is called Kadosh. He's called the Kadosh. So this is just pointing out the fact that the Nazir is called the Kadosh. It's actually a discussion, is the Nazir called the Kadosh or Zir Chotei? But he quotes here the one pasuk that says Nazir is holy. Why is Nazir holy? Because he denied himself or abstained from wine. And remember all the evil that happened to Noach when he planted the vines, and he drank from the vines, and the vines were fermented, and he got drunk. Or Belot, and with Lot, who became drunk, and what happened? He slept with his daughters. And therefore a person should also separate himself from the tumah, from that which is tamei, that which became impure. Even though there's no prohibition becoming tamei, right? Kamoshes kiru, as it says, big day amar, it's midras leprushim, that the prushim would stay away from the garments of the amei haaretz because they were afraid they were tamei. Ukamosh nikra nazir kadosh, in the same way the nazir is kadosh, mishamromi tumata made gamkein, the nazir as well also cannot become tamei made when he is a nazir. And also, just a couple more lines here, v'gam yishmar piv l'shanom et l'goel b'ribu ha'chila gasa, one has to be careful about his mouth and his tongue, that he shouldn't really try to do a lot of eating, gross eating, grub eating, and from speaking things that are disgusting words. Yeshayahu says that every person who speaks nevala will, I'm not sure what the end of the pasuk is, but speaking improperly, speaking uncouthly, speaking grossly, grubly is not a proper way. By separating yourself from these things in excess, you will reach prishud, as it says, Rabbi Ched says, Rabbi Ched, lo sach sicha b'teil miyamav. He said, not unnecessary speech. He used no unnecessary speech in his life. And consequently, what the Torah is trying to tell us is, and the Torah can't give you all the rules about what makes something kadosh. It's hard enough to give us the rules what's permissible and what's prohibited. Once you know what's permissible, then you still have to say, but I still got to put certain breaks on it.
At the end of the day, a person needs to know who they are. That's really what this comes down to, Moshe.
Right.
Think about it. Whether you talk about too much eating. What about someone who's a Talmud Chacham who actually discards his family and studies 18 hours a day and the kids are on welfare? I'm just saying. Happens.
I'm not sure that's a
Are they happy?
valid comparison.
What are you talking about? We're talking about doing something that's too much of excess. I know people like this. I don't know if they're happy. I'm saying that a person needs to know themselves and their place. A lot of us don't. That's the point.
Correct. So I think the tricky part here is, once again, we don't have the rules. We don't have the specifics. We don't have the guidebook. It's, as you say, it's about trying to know yourself, but it's hard to know what you know sometimes is right or wrong. And that's where it gets tricky. Is this person whose family on welfare really suffering, or do they have sufficiently to get by on welfare, but they don't have what you and I think is sufficient? I mean, welfare is welfare. It's meant to create a substance level. I think the issue may be what happens when a person's on welfare and they spend, hundreds and thousands of dollars on a new Strymel.
On the casino.
Right, not on the casino, on the Strymel. Right, would it be better not to get a artificial Strymel, artificial fur, which does exist today, or rather, those are the kinds of things that may get a little bit out of balance. I'm not the kind of person to really know how to make those kind of decisions for everybody, but you're right, we got to learn ourselves.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm citing an example. What's the right thing to do with life?
Right. The answer is, it's something that you kind of figure with self-explanation, trying to put things in balance. You're right. It's walking. I don't know, a tightrope. Right. If you do too much, you may fall off. It's walking one of those balance beams, not a tightrope, but the balance beam.
Rambam said derech.
The middle road. Now, how do you find? Yeah, they start with the Ramban's the derech hamtzai. Right. But what is the derech hamtzai?
The Rambam is not saying middle road. The Ramban is saying it's a different concept.
The Rambam,
just the middle road.
Well, I think what he's trying to say is you got to put certain of the enjoyments of life out of bounds, even if they're permissible. Right. What the Ramban is saying, that you can be, and he used the term briefly in this piece called Naval B'Shut Torah. You can be a person who is disgusting with the permission of the Torah. You can lose sight of what the real values are simply just by following the book.
That's what I'm saying.
Right. Okay. But the example, I think we all have to think a little more carefully. I think that's what Ray was trying to say. Rafael was trying to say that maybe the example is not perfect, because maybe for that person that is really what they need, and the family grows up that way.
That could be for one, but maybe not for someone else.
Agreed, right. But in other words, what it's trying to tell us here is something which is very difficult, and I kind of hedge whether I should do this Ramban, but I think it's an important piece, that it's not just about what's permissible or what's prohibited. It's not about what's right and wrong. There are some things that are a lot more intelligent, intangible, that you define in terms of what is the best way to do something. And I don't know really the way to kind of give you the roadmap for that, But you can figure it out after a while. If you're going to just become within the reshut of the Torah, just eat and drink and be merry, and that's all you've done. At the end of the day, that's all you've done. You've lost an opportunity for your life, and you can't turn your life backwards and just do it all over a second time. You got to try to find some kind of value within life itself. So it's really, but I think that's what Kedoshim is. So the Ramban is introducing a separate level. There's a person who does things that's right. Maybe that's a tzaddik. Tzaddik, by the way, we kind of think of a tzaddik, this guy with a big long beard, sitting in a big chair and saying Tillim all day. That's tzaddik. A tzaddik may be a person who does what's right, and tzedek. Tzedek means that which is just. A person who does something that's beyond that may be called a chassid, or may be called a kadosh. I know we use the term, we reserve kadoshim really for people who die sanctifying God's name, because that's the ultimate commitment. But the term kadoshim the Ramban is using is about a person within this life tries to put certain brakes on things. Okay? Any comments? More comments? Final comment, then we move to the next one.
So one more thing.
One more comment.
None of us are Rabbi Akiva, okay? But
Right.
Rabbi Akiva went away and he went away twice for years, and he brought back 24,000, right?
Correct.
And I'm supposing his wife was okay with that. But if we did that,
You would be beaten
we'd
out.
have an issue. So my point is, it's very difficult. And at the end of the day, we have to know who we are to do certain things in life.
Yeah.
That's right.
Great.
I think we have to know who we individually are. I think you have to be done chasus and get the benefit of the doubt about other examples that you specifically give. You don't know the situation that you're saying. You don't know whether that's a family that comes from death. So it's not an appropriate, because you're saying it with negativity. And I don't think that's appropriate. I think if you give an example like that about knowing who you are, a better example would be maybe a more personal one, or more something
I'm
that
not
is
citing
not
anyone in particular.
Well, right. Indeed, you're generalizing across a whole group of people, which is unfortunately the way a lot of these people are portrayed in less than positive,
Rafal is concerned about stereotyping, right? And that's a valid concern.
Listen, I'm in the community now. I'd be stereotyping myself.
Okay, so we're going to withdraw the specific examples from the record, and we're going to talk about generalities. And I said that's the tricky part about this Ramban, is it's hard to really know how to apply it to every case. But I think you have a general idea. Okay, we're going to move to another Ramban. Is that fair? What time is it?
10.
It's almost 10. So we got time for another short Ramban. This goes back 22, Pasuk Chavbed Lamed Bet. This is the flip side of this Ramban. 22, verse 32. Okay? And then back in Parshas Emor. Okay? And
Chavbed Bet?
Chavbed Lamed Bet.
Oh, Lamed Bet.
Slicha, Chavbet Lamed Bet. This is about sanctifying Hashem's name. Chavbet Lamed Bet. Okay. So at the end of the part about, actually it's an introduction to the different holidays. Okay. So there are two things here. One is, this is almost like the other side of Chavbet Pasuk Lamed Bet.
Where is this, Moshe?
636. There we go. 36 has got to be a good number. Oh my goodness. 22, 32. This is 33, 22, 22, 32, 23, 23. I think you're going backwards.
איזה דף יש לך?
Kedoshim to you, where is it? V'nikdash dem.
32, 33.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the other side about trying to find the values in life. So I'll just read you the pasuk quickly while these guys find it. So Hashem says, Moshe says to the Jewish people, "Ushmartem mitzvotai v'asitem otam ani Hashem." You're going to keep my mitzvot and do them because I'm Hashem. V'lo techalu et shem kodshi. You're not going to desecrate my holy name. V'nikdashti b'shem b'topan Yisrael. Rather, I shall be sanctified among the children of Israel. Ani Hashem HaKadosh. I'm the God who sanctified you. Let's get talking about being sanctified. So God will be sanctified by what we're going to do. So says the Ramban, in order to sanctify God's name, what do we have to do? it looks like not to desecrate God's name. The pasuk said, "V'lo techalalu et shem kodeshi," don't desecrate my name, but rather, "V'nikdashti b'toch bnei Yisrael," I will be made sanctified. I'll be made sanctified among the children of Israel. So says the Ramban, who doesn't have it yet. You guys have it? 22:32. You still falling out? 20. No, this is 24. Oh my goodness! So you got to teach you guys how to count numbers in Roman numerals. Okay, 22. There we go. 22, 18, 32.
I'm from the south of Italy.
Okay, here we go. Bottom of the page. Bottom of the left side. We're good? You guys got it together? So v'nikdashti b'toch bnei Yisrael. So the question is, what does the pasuk mean to sanctify? How does God become sanctified? It looks like the pasuk says, "V'lo techalalu et shem kodeshi v'nikdashti b'toch bnei Yisrael." You shall desecrate my name, and I will become holy. So it looks like, what are we desecrating God's name? Like if we do an Aveira. Says the Ramban, not true. Al dat rabotenu mitzvat dasei shenekadesh shmo b'mitzvot, that there's a positive mitzvah. There's actually one of the 613 commandments to sanctify God's name, which means what? Al yidei shenerag v'lo navor alehem, even that to be killed rather, and not to serve and not to transgress any of the mitzvot. So there's a positive mitzvah to sanctify God's name, which means even if my life is on the line. V'zel perusha motzietchem eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem lelokim shutama kolel shekol mitzvot. The reason that goes to all the mitzvot are that God took me out, and I have to do the mitzvot. Ve'omer shehutam lichlol kol mitzvot shero'i lekadesh shmo lehem bavur shanachnu avadav asher golanu mitzrayim. It tells us that we are going to sanctify His name because we are the servants who God took out of Egypt. So there's a positive mitzvah, says the Ramban, and this is the pasuk that tells us that if you have a choice between sanctifying God's name or desecrating God's name by transgressing the mitzvah, and you can sanctify God's name, you can actually give your life in behalf of doing a mitzvah for Hashem. So therefore there's a special mitzvah of Lekadesh Shem Shamayim. This is the Kedoshim that we normally see. In other words, that even if my life is put on the line, the Ramban feels that this is telling me the mitzvah taseh that I'm going to have to do in terms of sanctifying Kadosh Baruch Hu's name. So the flip side of it is that on one hand there's permissible things and prohibited things. On the other hand, if push comes to shove, then in order to sanctify Hashem's name, I've got to give up my life. I have to, and I shouldn't desecrate God's name by doing an Aveirah.
So this is an example of what we were talking before about how to choose, even though it's right to protect your life by, let's say, eating pork if you have to.
Right.
In this case, it's wrong. You have to give up your life in order to...
So what this says, that if it's a situation of Kiddush Hashem, I am permissible to give up my life even for any mitzvah.
Just only b'toch b'nei Israel, not b'nei Goyim.
Right, b'toch b'nei Israel, but it's going to be open for everybody to see it. So if it's b'farhesia, if it's public, it would make a difference. So in other words, that even though we normally say that every mitzvah is meant to preserve life, where push comes to shove, and I'm being given a choice between not just break a mitzvah, but to break a mitzvah and desecrate Hashem's name, it becomes a different factor in terms of what my decision is. And this is why we have many times in Jewish history where Kiddush Hashem, where Jews sanctify their lives, not just for worshiping idols, not worshiping idols, for anything. There were people said, I'm going to take a stand because I'm being persecuted because I'm a Jew, and people want to see exactly how far my commitment is. That's a very hard thing to say. We don't know how each of us would react if we were put into that situation. But what this pasuk is saying is specifically because God wants us to be sanctified with the mitzvot. Sanctifying yourself with the mitzvot even means the ultimate sacrifice.
So a gun to your head, bow down to this idol, or we shoot. You have to let them shoot.
That's for sure. The question is, if they say not just bow down to the idol, they say eat the chazer or we shoot.
Let them shoot.
Right. So that's not clear. So once again, when it comes to three cardinal principles, right, that means that for sure I can't do that. So one is murder, one is idol worship, and one is arayot, prohibited relationships. The issue is, what about other mitzvot? They say, you know what, we want you to eat, let's say, eat chazer. So I say, well, I'll eat chazer and I'll survive. And the answer is no. We want you to eat chazer publicly because we want to show you, everybody, that belief in God is not that important. That changes the equation.
The public,
because that
make it so different.
Right? It becomes Kiddush Hashem or Chil Hashem. And what the Ramban is saying is actually one of the mitzvot. So being put into a situation where there's a public either affirmation or denial of any mitzvah is different than actually breaking a law to save your life. Why? Because God took us out. God took us out with the purpose of doing the mitzvot. The moment we break that concept, not because to save my life, but because I'm showing people that I'm weak in my faith, and the whole faith begins to crumble. Right? I lose my values. Okay, yes?
How do we reconcile between these two completely different explanations of what Kadosh means?
So obviously,
first one was precious, and the other now is Dvekus.
So they're using different ways.
There's no connection between them.
Correct. It looks like there's no connection. Looks like they're separate things. Correct. Looks like it looks like a mitzvah daseh. Right. And the Ramban is actually Ramban is actually a little bit difficult because the pasuk is couched by the fact that says, I'll read you the two pasukim together. Keep my commandments. Why? So what's me velot chalot shem koshi? Don't desecrate my name. So what does that mean? And obviously keep my commandments. The whole Torah has been about keeping my commandments, keep my commandments, keep my commandments. So that's what the Ramban said. That all these two psukim together really tell me there's a special mitzvah to keep the commandments, because if I break if there's a situation when I break the commandment, I desecrate God's name, then I really haven't sanctified God. I sanctify God by keeping the commandments even on the pain of death, where the opposite would be chilul Hashem. So that's why I said it becomes a difference if it's done publicly, if it's done for a reason to break my faith, or it's simply done because I have a choice.
Yeah, but how does that connect? The same
word.
It
looks like they look very different. The answer is you're right. They are different. Maybe one is because Kedoshim, one is about Kedoshim, I should be holy, and the other is really V'nikdashtem, and you'll become holy. I'm not sure how to make them together.
In my mind, it raises a little bit of a question on the first interpretation, which ends with Kadoshani.
So the answer is, what I'm trying to say is that the piece we just did now is a really confluence of two psukim. So Shmartem et kol mitzvosai v'asisem otam. Do the mitzvot, and by doing the mitzvot, do them in order not to sanctify my name, not to desanctify my name, and in order that my name should be holy. Don't desecrate my name and sanctify my name. How do you do that? How does my name become sanctified? By your keeping the mitzvot. The first part about what you're going to do to become kadosh. Here's about God becoming kadosh. By your action of shmartem mitzvotai. There are different usages. I don't have I believe there are different usages. One is talking about in the first case me doing kadosh. The second one is about me doing the mitzvot in order that God should be nikdashti.
Why? Because the vocabulary was not that rich.
Because
we used the same word for two different things.
One is about God, one is about me.
Right.
Kadoshim to you, because I should be kadosh like Hashem, and this one is I should keep the mitzvot in order to sanctify God's name.
Both were about God, because
but I see there's a little difference between the two of them. Okay, tell you what we're pretty much out of time, so maybe we'll have to break, and we'll on Thursday I wanted to talk about actually the piece. This parsha is Sfiras HaOmer. So there's a piece in the Nesivos Shalom I want to talk about Sfiras HaOmer, and if I have a chance, I want to do this piece of Ramban that also talks about Sfiras HaOmer. Mm-hmm. So we'll do.
You're not doing crushed testicles and short legs.
No, I'm not doing that. I can't do everything in these parshas. Okay? But I really want to do the Sfiras HaOmer because we're in the period of Sfiras HaOmer now. Let's take a 5-minute break, then we'll come to do Rabbi Melamed.
I would never, ever